Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto Pony Summoner in My Little Pony. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by FanFiction and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. At long last. Inside a hidden shack outside of the village Konoha, a blonde teen dressed in an orange jumpsuit sat in silence and tranquility. He felt at home here in this tiny shack, away from the village and the scornful and simple-minded villagers. In truth, the blonde pitied the villagers for their naivety and concerns to shinobi affairs and village secrets. He scoffed at the last thought. Secrets. It was no secret that he was despised by the adult villagers and that they were doing everything they could to make the younger generation hate him as well. Years ago, the Sandaime Hokage, a wise, but at the same time foolish man, placed a law in regards to the blindness condition. The law stated that mentioning his condition was punishable by death. Of course, like all laws, the people found ways around it. They didn't speak of his condition, but that didn't stop them from hinting at it or lying about the blonde to keep the hatred for him strong. And the children of these hateful adults listened to their parents without question, like sheep trusting their shepherd without a second thought. He sighed tiredly at his life so far. At this point, the people who treated him like a person was only a handful at best. The Sandaime, the father-daughter chef duo, 2 or 3 jonin, and possibly a couple of genin. At most, the total was around 10. At least, it was around 4 or 5. Hardly anything in a village totaling in the thousands, if not hundred thousands. The teen shook his head to prevent his mind from going down that depressing road once again. He'd walked down it far too many times to even care anymore and had finally decided to ignore those who scorn him. He also made a point to visit this shack every day. His home away from home. No one knew of it, or at least he believed no one else did. In truth, the shack was actually a shrine for a lost clan. His clan. The clan was once a village that was allied with Konoha before it was destroyed by a joint assault from 2 of the 5 main villages. How did he know this? He read it in a journal. But not just any journal. No, this journal was written and owned by a member of the clan that was alive long after the passing of the Sandaime Hokage. The journal he had in his hand once belonged to Uzumaki Mido, his ancestor and wife of the late Sandaime. For nearly 2 years, he had spent an hour or so a day reading and rereading the journal so that he could see what life in Konoha was like for the famous Uzumaki. He was currently on his 4th reread of the journal to date. It's been so long since Hashirama-kun passed. I've lost track of how long years ago and spend most of my days in our home, watching the village grow and mature from the sapling that my husband planted into the budding tree it has become today. Yet, I can't help but feel with each passing day that I am becoming more and more unwelcome here. The villagers who once looked to me with respect and kindness now look at me with veiled fear and distrust. It escaped me for the first few years as to why this change had occurred. But I know the truth now. The Kyuubi I keep at bay is what they fear. Since the passing of Hashirama-kun, I have felt the negativity in the village grow with each passing week. They fear that I will let the fox free now that the only person who could control it is gone. I cannot help but pity them for letting fear cloud their better instincts and judgment. I was capable of sealing the fox within me without any kind of drawback, but they don't care. Hashirama-kun was capable of controlling all of the Bijuu with his infamous Mokuton, and the villagers are afraid that their last defense against the fox being freed is gone. I am counting down the days until I believe their fear will turn more hostile. The blonde sighed as he finished reading the passage. He carefully closed the age journal and placed it neatly back in the shelf he found it on in the shrine. With a resigned expression, he made his way out of the shrine and back to the village. His team had their first C-rank mission today, and he had to be ready. Putting up his mask of naivety and innocence, he made his way back to the village while mentally promising to return to the shrine as soon as he came back. 2 weeks later. The blonde walked into the shrine with a somber expression on his face. The mission had gone from bad to worse from the very beginning, starting with the ambush against their client and the reveal of him lying to them. The rest of the mission just went downhill from there, but the biggest blow to his psyche was the girl he met seeing herself as nothing more than a tool. A weapon for a man who didn't show he cared for her until she was gone from the world. It hurt seeing the girl just throw away her life like that without any remorse, only to have her sacrifice be in vain due to the man she saved getting himself killed as he tried to avenge her. The blonde had buried them on a hill overlooking the port village with regret as he kept thinking how things could have been different. He could have helped them seek asylum in the village. He could have tried harder to convince the girl that her life was more than being a tool. He could have done a lot of things, but he didn't. He had failed 2 people who could have turned a new leaf and started a fresh life. His mind kept running over what he could have done, while his body moved on autopilot and grabbed Mido's journal from the shelf. When he opened the book, his mind finally stopped thinking over the mission in favor of rereading Mido's thoughts. Ashina visited me again today. Such a sweet and spirited girl, she reminds me of how I used to be at her age. It pains my heart every time I think of how she may lose that free-spiritedness when the fox is transferred from my body to hers. My time is nearing an end while hers is barely beginning. A large part of me is very tempted to just let the fox reside in me as I pass on, but I know Hashirama-kun sacrificed so much for the fox to remain in Konoha. It seems petty and far too prideful in favor of the village to let this continue, but I can't help but want to honor my husband's sacrifice. He was a good man and he always had the intentions of the people over his own. A good man. A good husband. I have asked my friends to watch over Kushina and help her retain some aspect of love. It is something that I have noticed over the years I held the fox. Love counters its hate, and so long as the container has love, the hatred will stay locked away. Celestia and Luna were more than happy to take upon my request, but they need Kushina to summon the contract in order for them to aid her. I still can't help but slap myself at the fact that I have forgotten where the contract resides. The one thing I believed I could do to help Kushina, and I don't even have the necessities to do so. Kami-sama, have mercy on this foolish woman for her mistake and watch over Kushina-chan. Heaven knows that she will need it for the life she will soon live. The blonde closed the journal with a sad sigh. When he first read that passage, he tried to look up information regarding Kushina, Celestia, or Luna. Unfortunately, he was unsuccessful in finding anything about them. After weeks of searching, he finally figured that they were some kind of secret that only certain people were privy to know. Even now, he still wonders who those three were. He knows that Kushina couldn't be alive since the Kyuubi now resides in his body, but that didn't mean that Celestia or Luna were dead yet. He looked out the shrine window and frowned at the darkening sky. It was late and he couldn't sleep here since the Hokage could have a need to contact him. So, he placed the book back and made his way back to his apartment where an empty room full of loneliness awaited him. 2 days later. The blonde was seen leaning against a wall with a journal he was rereading on its last passage. My time has almost reached its end. I can feel the fox trying desperately to escape my weakening body. The transfer is set to happen this evening and I know that Kushina-chan is still afraid. I had explained to her exactly what was going to happen the week before and she took it precisely as I predicted she would. Fearful and panicked. Why wouldn't she be? A cataclysmic creature is being placed into her and she is the only thing holding it back from escaping and causing mass mayhem. Of course she'd be afraid. I worry for her. The other Uzumaki have left the village, leaving just me and Kushina-chan within its walls. She'll be alone with no family to call upon and a burden fit for a village full of jonin within her. Such a life I would not wish upon even my greatest enemy. I tried finding that blasted scroll again, but I was once again unsuccessful. Even my friends, the ones I see as family, will be unable to assist her. My heart is breaking as I keep thinking of how her life will be in the village as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and last remaining Uzumaki. My time is nearly spent. I have but one last thing to write to whoever has found this. Remember that your family is everything. A village will always betray you eventually, but family stays loyal no matter what. If you, my dear reader, are of my clan, then this lesson is our clan's creed. Family over pride, family over glory, family over all. Never forget. The blonde had a hollow smile on his face as he closed the journal. If his clan's creed was all about family loyalty, then where was his family? Why were he and this Kushina woman alone in the village without any of the family there to help them? He sighed sadly as he made to return the book, but tripped on a loose floorboard. He fell towards the bookshelf and reached out to one of the many shelves to steady himself, but his hand grasped a scroll instead and he braced for the impact with the floor. However, he met resistance as if he was grasping a door wall. He looked to his arm and saw it pulling on the scroll from the shelf. His head tilted in curiosity before he heard a loud and echoing click from behind the shelf. Before his eyes, the shelf and the wall it leaned against spun around and revealed a hidden tunnelway that was lit by old torches. He slowly stood back to his feet and headed inside, noticing that the torches had seals on them that were most likely keeping them lit. During his many visits to this shrine, he didn't just read the journal. No, he also read and studied the many scrolls that went over lessons on Fuinjutsu and was instantly amazed at how useful and diverse the art was. After 2 years of visiting the shrine, he believed that he was at an adept level, but he needed an experienced Fuinjutsu user to examine his skill level. As he made his way down the tunnel, he noticed that the air had gone from ancient and tranquil to inviting and warm. His curiosity was growing at the feeling as he finally entered a small rounded room with a single pedestal in the center that had a scroll and piece of paper on it. He approached the pedestal and read the paper that rested on the scroll. To the reader. This scroll is a prized possession of the people that hail from the islands with swirling tides. If you are of this swirling clan, then open the scroll and claim what is yours by right. If you are not, then turn back or risk being lost to this world forever. Islands with swirling tides, murmured the blonde before the answer came to him. The Uzumaki. Setting the paper aside, he grabbed the scroll and observed the design. The scroll itself was a dull yellow with the edges splashed with vibrant red in a wave-like design. He sat on the ground and opened the scroll, looking to the many Uzumaki who signed it. The most recent being Uzumaki Mido. This must be that scroll she tried to find, he muttered to no one as he bit his thumb and began to sign the scroll. After reading about Mido having a summoning scroll, the teen had asked the Sandame about them. The aged Cage was happy to tell the boy the mechanics behind summoning contracts, scrolls, and animals. He told of how the scroll works, how each contract had a different sequence of seals, and how each summoning animal clan had different rules or guidelines for their summoners to follow. Using the knowledge he was given, the blonde signed his name in his own blood before he placed a bloody handprint of his right palm underneath it. Just as he finished, he felt a pull on his form before he disappeared in a plume of smoke. Summon Realm, moments before. In the throne room of a castle that rested on clouds, two creatures were having a calm discussion about the worrying news concerning their summoning race as of late. The first had the appearance of a large white horse. However, it also had a pair of white wings and a horn on its head. The mane and tail of the horse was also strange. They were blue, green, purple, and pink and had a flowing motion even as it stood in place. On its flank was a mark in the design of the sun, while it wore noble jewelry around its neck and on its head. Its bright purple eyes contained much wisdom, kindness, and authority. The second creature was the same as the first, but had many differences. For starters, the color of its coat, wings, and horn were a very dark, almost midnight, blue. The mane and tail had the colors of a clear night sky, complete with sparkles to represent the stars, and was translucent enough to see through it at some points. The mark on its flank was in the design of a white crescent moon, and the jewelry it wore was near black in color, with the one around the neck bearing the mark on its flank. Like in the first, its dark blue eyes showed wisdom and authority, but the kindness seemed to be more regretful than anything. These two were Celestia and Luna, the head summons of the Uzumaki clan summoning contract. They were known as alicorns. Horses with the wings of Pegasi and the horns of unicorns. "We are running out of time, my sister," Luna stated in a sorrowful tone. "After Mido's passing, we have lost all contact with the outside world. Soon our contract will vanish." Celestia nodded with a slight frown. "Indeed, this is a most troubling time. If an Uzumaki doesn't find our contract soon, we will no longer be considered summoning creatures and will be forced to leave our realm and live amongst the humans in their realm. Much like the dragons were forced years ago." Luna gazed out the window of their castle with a sense of fading hope. "What should we tell our people?" The white alicorn sighed and was about to speak before the two felt a tug on their minds and turned their heads to the scroll on the wall next to them so quick that they could have suffered whiplash. On the scroll, underneath Mido's name, they saw a name start to slowly appear. "Uzumaki," Luna began. "Naruto," Celestia finished in slight shock as the name was then accompanied by a handprint. As soon as it was there, Celestia turned to her sister and they both nodded before they focused their power on the scroll. "Onumton. Jayaku Kuchius, Yin-Yang release. Reverse summon." They cried out together as the newest name on the scroll lit up and a plume of smoke appeared in the center of the room. When it cleared, the two alicorns gazed at the human they had brought to their realm. He stood at a height of 5'8", had hair as gold as sunlight, had stranger whisker-like markings on his cheeks, and blue eyes as bright as sapphire. He wore blue shinobi sandals, an orange jumpsuit with some blue and white thrown in, and a blue headband with the symbol of Konoha on it. He was coughing and waving his arm around to clear the smoke before he focused on his surroundings. The room he was in seemed fit for royalty, and he couldn't help but silently marvel at the decorations that brought out the nobility of the room. The clearing of the throat was heard, and he turned to see the two alicorns gazing at him. One in shock and the other with a kind smile. The smiling white one stepped forward until she was right in front of him and bent her head down to look him in the eyes. He was confused as to what she was doing, but he didn't turn his gaze from hers. After some time, she pulled back and nodded with her smile growing ever so slightly. "Welcome to our realm, young Uzumaki. You cannot fathom how long our people have awaited a summoner to arrive here. I am Celestia, one of the head summons and the raiser of the sun in this realm. Behind me is my sister Luna, the other head summon and raiser of the moon." The blonde leaned to his side slightly so that he could get a better look at Luna and offered a small wave. She returned the gesture with a small nod and a faint smile. As his blue eyes returned to Celestia's purple ones, he questioned, "So, how did I get here? Did the scroll bring me?" "In a sense," answered the white alicorn as she motioned for him to follow her with her wing. The three of them were walking down a hallway of the castle as she continued, "The scroll acted as a medium for my sister and I to use our powers to bring you here. We reverse summoned you so that we could see you for ourselves." "Summoners can be summoned too?" asked the Uzumaki in slight surprise. "That is correct," Luna answered. "It usually only occurs when a summoned clan has some important news for their summoner. In this sense, we did it to test your worth for ourselves. The blonde nodded as he glanced at the decorated halls. The Sandaime had told him that, while also having rules and guidelines, summon clans test their potential summoners to see if they have what it takes. So, what is my test? Celestia led the two of them to a chariot of sorts that had a team of Pegasi leading it. For your test to occur, we must go down to the lower city. Once there, I will call the 6 who will test you. Naruto nodded and carefully stepped inside the chariot with them, but he had to hold on to one of their legs since it wasn't built to carry humans. The ride itself was actually enjoyable to him. The feeling of the wind in his face and the peacefulness of the realm itself was indescribable to one who knew nothing but scorn and rejection his entire life. Once the chariot landed, the three stepped off, and Celestia had her horn glow a bright white before a shot of energy flew into the air and exploded much like a flare. They will be here shortly, she assured as they waited patiently. Sure enough, not much time later, the blonde caught sight of 6 ponies calmly heading their way. The first was a unicorn with a light purple coat and horn. Her mane and tail were colored dark blue with a streak rose and violet. She had purple eyes and a mark on her flank that was in the design of a rose-colored 6-point star surrounded by white sparkles. The next was a simple pony with an orange coat and a blonde mane and tail. Both the mane and tail were held like a human's ponytail, and her green eyes brought some distinction to her. She wore what Naruto could only assume was a cowgirl hat, and her flank had a mark in the design of 3 apples on it. The third was a Pegasus with a bright blue coat and wings. She had red-violet eyes while her hair and mane were colored like a rainbow and were slightly spiked, making her appear to be a tomboy to Naruto. Her flank's mark was in the design of a cloud with a rainbow coming out of it like a bolt of lightning. The fourth was another Pegasus with a pale yellow coat and smooth light pink hair. She had cyan blue eyes, and her mark was designed as 3 blue butterflies with pale purple wings. She had this timid aura about her that reminded Naruto of that Hyuga girl that was in his graduating class. The fifth was a unicorn with a white coat and horn. Her purple-blue mane and tail were styled into 2 long curls, giving Naruto the feeling that she enjoyed style. Her azure blue eyes were enhanced by the sky blue eyeshadow, and her mark looked like 3 bright blue diamonds. The last mare was a pony that already had Naruto giving an unnoticeable smile. She had a light pink coat that had a mark in the design of 3 balloons, 1 yellow and 2 blue on her flank. Her hair and mane were a darker almost red pink and were both poofed in a way that made her already happy and cheerful aura more pronounced. She had bright blue eyes like his and a near constant smile of joy on her face. When they reached the 2 alicorns and human teen, Celestia turned to the blonde and declared, "Naruto, these will be your testers." She then gestured to each and said, "They are Twilight Sparkle, Applejack, Rainbow Dash, Fluttershy, Rarity, and Pinkie Pie." Luna then gestured to the Uzumaki and introduced, "Girls, this is Uzumaki Naruto. You are to see if he has what it takes to be our summoner." Twilight stepped up and asked, "How do we test him?" Celestia smiled and answered, "See if he has the qualities of the elements of harmony." While Naruto looked confused, the 6 mares nodded and Rainbow Dash stepped forward. "Okay, I'll go first. My element is loyalty, so let's see if you got what it takes." When he nodded, she asked, "If you had to choose between your home and someone you cherish, what would you choose?" His answer was immediate. "I'd choose my loved one." Mito-sama said that family is everything, and while I have no family of my own, I have those who I will protect with my life. Dash looked at the 2 alicorns and they nodded, showing that he was being truthful. The Pegasus nodded to him and said, "You passed my test, Blondie." Applejack was next and she tipped her hat to him in greeting. "Alright partner, my element is honesty. I want you to tell me something truthful that comes from your heart or soul." The blonde looked slightly reluctant to do so, but he nodded. "To hold the Kyuubi no Kitsune within me, just as Mito-sama and Kushina-san did in the past." The orange-coated mare looked to her leaders, who both nodded sadly, and offered the blonde her hoof. When he slowly grabbed it, she pulled him in for a gentle hug, surprising him greatly. "You have honesty, even amongst strangers. But you should also know that you have our support, Naruto. We don't see you as the fox and we never will. Remember that." When they separated, the Uzumaki nodded to her in thanks while Rarity stepped forward. She spent a good 5 minutes circling him and humming in thought while most of the other mares rolled their eyes at what she was bound to say. When she finally stopped circling him, she frowned slightly. "Well darling, I believe that a change of wardrobe is long overdue. Whether you pass or not, visit my store when we're finished and I'll see what I can whip up for you." "Okay." He said a little unsurely, making her nod with a smile. "Very good. Now dear, my element is generosity. Have you ever given or done something for someone with no expectancy of compensation?" The blonde closed his eyes and searched his memories before his first meeting with Haku came to mind. While his face grew depressed due to knowing she was dead, he answered, "Yes, I helped a girl look for herbs to help heal the one she cherished most. I never expected anything in return and just wanted to help her." After receiving confirmation, Rarity smiled and placed a hoof on his shoulder. When he looked into her eyes, she nodded to him. You are a generous man, Naruto. I can easily see that. You know what it's like to have nothing and strive to prevent others from experiencing that. You pass my test. The Uzumaki nodded in thanks as Fluttershy nervously stepped. He offered her a reassuring smile, which seemed to help her confidence as she spoke. My element, Naruto, is kindness. How do you treat those you meet? To be honest, most people I meet are not exactly kind to me. I tend to ignore those people now and treat those who see me as a person with respect. The yellow Pegasus nodded sadly. It is hard to be kind in a place that has none. But, as long as you have those who care, you will never lose that kindness. She then gathered up some courage and hugged him like Applejack did, surprising both him and the others. I can tell that you are a pure and kind person, Naruto. You have regrets about things you could have changed, but you were kind enough to give those people you think you failed a respectable send-off. His eyes widened at what she was getting at as she let him go. Those two Zabuza and Hakuthi were your enemy, but you tried to help them turn over a new leaf. Kindness to your enemy is the greatest of all, Naruto. You pass my test. The blonde nodded as he wiped away a stray tear. Pinkie Pie was next as she bounced up to him with a smile. Hi, I'm Pinkie Pie. It's nice to meet you. He couldn't help but smile at her and greeted back, I'm Naruto. Nice to meet you too, Pinkie. She nodded and sat down in front of him. Okie dokie Loki, my element is laughter. Got any times where, instead of acting negatively, you smiled and laughed it off? He closed his eyes and thought over her question. One thing came to mind, but he was unsure if it would count. Well, before I started to just ignore the people who treated me unfairly, I used to prank them to get back at them. I had fun with my pranks and made sure that no one was hurt by them. He then looked to Pinkie with an anxious gaze. Does that count? The pink mare nodded. Yep. You could have made those pranks harmful, but you didn't and got a good laugh out of something that most people would be negative about. You pass my test. He nodded in thanks before she got in his face and asked, by the way, mind sharing your pranks with me? I always love a good prank. The others grew worried while Naruto actually grinned. Sure, I don't mind. The happy pony cheered before she went back to the others and Twilight stepped up. Okay, my test is actually very simple. My element is magic, so I want you to release as much energy as you can. Okay. The blonde nodded with a faint smirk before he made a ram seal and flared his chakra. To the others, it was like a tidal wave of energy flowed from him and washed over them. A literal dome of chakra surrounded him before it slowly grew larger in diameter and covered them all. In the center was Naruto releasing the energy with no sign of stress or exhaustion on his face. Incredible was the collective thought of the mares, while Twilight had Naruto stop releasing his chakra. When the energy died down, the unicorn nodded to the Uzumaki. I have to say, your energy output is unreal. I don't think I've ever witnessed someone with that level of energy in them. You pass my test, Naruto. The Uzumaki nodded with a faint smile before he turned to Celestia and Luna. Well, you certainly have the requirements needed to be our summoner, commented the white alicorn. Luna nodded. To think that after nearly 40 years we finally have someone worthy enough to be our summoner. You honor us, young Uzumaki. Naruto felt a little awkward at hearing that. He didn't really feel like he did anything all that special, but it still felt nice to have people thanking him. Even if said people were summoned creatures. Well, I have no qualms with you being our summoner, Naruto. However, you should know that the 6 of us here with you are the only ones capable of being summoned at this time, Celestia explained. Why's that? Asked the Uzumaki. Over the years we were without a summoner, many of the ponies who were volunteer summons resigned themselves from the list. The number grew higher and higher over time until it was just the 8 of us left. As such, your summoning options are somewhat limited and… It doesn't matter to me, interrupted the blonde, making the others look to him. Whatever help and support you can offer me is better than having none at all. Even if it was just one of you that I could summon, I'd still be grateful. So, don't worry about numbers because I'm sure you all are more than enough. The mares were taken aback by his sincerity and couldn't keep the smiles from forming on their faces. You have our gratitude, Naruto, replied the white alicorn with a small bow that was followed by the others. When they straightened themselves, she continued, now, I believe you have some clothes to replace. Rarity was quick to step up and grab Naruto's sleeve with her teeth before she practically dragged him to her store. The others followed the two with amused faces. Rarity's shop. Now, just hold still darling and I'll whip you up a dashing outfit. Any preferences? Asked Rarity as Naruto stood in the middle of her shop. Something that's both sturdy and allows me to blend into most crowds, he answered with a shrug. Color preference? She asked as she stood next to the fabrics. Dark browns with some white thrown in. Also, could you place the yuzu swirl somewhere on it? She smiled and nodded as she measured his arm length, torso, waist, leg length and neckline. After that, she grabbed some dark brown fabric and set to work. I have an idea of the outfit and your measurements already, dear. Come back in an hour or so and it'll be finished. Naruto nodded and left the shop only to run into Applejack. Howdy there, partner. Think you can help me with something? Sure. What did you need? The orange mare led him to her apple farm and pointed to the apple-filled trees. I reckon you could be a mighty big help in getting those down. I usually just kick the tree and shake them loose, but my leg has been sore for some time. Think you could help? The blonde didn't answer and just made some clones that each went to a separate tree. The many blondes used their chakra to walk up the tree and pull the apples off of the branches. Applejack waited below with various baskets for them to toss the apples into. It took some time to collect them all, but they got it done within a half hour. Thank you kindly, Naruto. Don't think I coulda done it without you. The blonde wiped some sweat from his brow and replied, no problem, Applejack. Glad I could help. Hey Blondie. Called out Dash as she descended from the sky next to them. Rarity said that she's almost done and that you could head back to her shop. I thought she said it'd take an hour. Applejack rolled her eyes. She must really not like your jumpsuit and work double time to get your outfit ready. The blonde looked to his attire and sweat dropped at how beat up and worn out it looked. Yeah, I think you're right, he said as he made his way back over to Rarity's. As soon as he stepped inside, he was pulled into a changing room where a neatly placed set of clothing was waiting for him. Hurry up now, darling. I need to see how you look in that masterpiece I made for you. Naruto chuckled at her antics and stripped himself out of his jumpsuit before he grabbed the clothes and began putting them on. Unknown to him, the white unicorn had called over the others to see how he would look. When he stepped out, Rarity had a look of pride on her face as the others complimented the outfit. The Uzumaki was dressed in black boots and some gray-brown pants with a kunai pouch strapped to his right leg. Holding up the pants was a black belt with the Yuzu swirl designed as a belt buckle. On his torso, he wore a white long-sleeved shirt underneath a greenish-brown collared vest. Over it all, he wore a dark brown headed coat that reached the back of his knees and had the hood down behind his back. To finish it off, he wore white gloves on his hands that had the Yuzu swirl on them in black. Naruto heard them murmuring amongst themselves and asked, so, how do I look? Celestia smiled to him and nodded. You look very sophisticated and professional, Naruto. You've really outdone yourself, Rarity. Thank you, my lady, replied the stylish unicorn. Now Naruto, those clothes have some mesh armor sewed into the fabric to increase their durability. I'll get to work on making some extras for you, but I must say that you look quite dashing. Thanks Rarity, said the blonde as he rubbed his head bashfully. He then turned back to Celestia and queried, so, what happens now? Now, we send you back to where you found the scroll. Be sure to keep it safe and remember where you put it. We don't want to risk waiting another 40 years before a summoner calls upon us again. At his nod, she continued, now, over the years we each have gained some experience in what you shinobi refer to as Kekkei Genkai. We won't go into details now, but you will see for yourself soon. For now, just continue your ninja career and don't hesitate to summon us. Whether to have us assist you or to just talk. The blonde nodded again before he bowed respectfully to them all. You all have my gratitude. What you have done for me these past few hours is more than anyone has ever done. I promise not to tarnish the name of both my clan and your people. The others smiled at his promise while Pinky went up and hugged him. Be sure to have some fun, Naruto. You better not become a stick in the mud. He chuckled at her wording and replied, I promise, Pinky, so long as you and the others promise to be there for me when I need you. She smiled and declared, cross my heart and hope to fly, stick a cupcake in my eye. The other mares chuckled at the pink pony's promise poem before the two alicorns sent the blonde back. Luna turned to her sister and commented, he'll help us and his clan return to their former glory. I know it. The white alicorn nodded and added, not to mention we'll be with him every step of the way. At long last our bond with the Uzumaki clan will be reformed. End. Chapter 2. Examination Part 1. Within the Uzumaki shrine, a plume of smoke erupted and revealed a newly dressed Naruto. He coughed slightly as some dust mixed with the smoke and entered his lungs. Definitely not the best way to travel, he muttered between coughs as he made his way back to the Kauma contract. He removed the scroll from its pedestal and walked back into the main room of the shrine before he started to search for a sealing scroll. It took about 3 minutes before he found one and unsealed the contents of it. From the scroll came a book and a hyate with a yuzu swirl on the head plate. He pocketed the hyate before he sealed away the contract into the sealing scroll. Once he pocketed that as well, he picked up the book and looked at the cover. The Legend of the Rakuto Sennin, he read before he pocketed the book to read later. He gazed out the window and saw that it was barely around midday and decided to go visit the Ichiraku stand. His time in the summon realm left him quite hungry. The Noha streets. With his hood shadowing his face, the blonde Uzumaki made his way through the bustling people going about their everyday business. A sigh escaped his lips as he was bumped into by various villagers. The streets aren't usually this crowded, he mused with a slight frown. Something big must be going on. He finally made it to his favorite ramen stand and stepped inside before he could be bumped into once more. He noticed that Hada Kakashi, his sensei, was there and appeared to be waiting for someone. Most likely him. Curious as to what the lazy jonin could want with him, he stepped up to the man while removing his hood. "Sensei, what are you doing here?" he asked in a calm tone, betraying the mask of idiocy most people were so accustomed to. The silver-haired man turned his uncovered eye to his blonde student and gave a curious glance to his attire. "Trying out a new look, Naruto?" The Uzumaki took a brief look to his new wardrobe and rubbed his head with a straight face. With a shrug, he answered, "I figured it was time for a change. Someone took the time to make this for me, and I think it's a lot better than my old jumpsuit." The jonin nodded before he gestured to the stools. "Why don't we grab a bite to eat while I tell you what's come up? I'll pay for your first 2 bowls." The blonde nodded in thanks, and the 2 shinobi ordered their food before Kakashi stated, "I decided to enter you and your teammates in the Chunin exams. I already told them about it and gave them the forms needed to enter." Sasuke seemed eager, not a surprise there, and Sakura looks unsure, but I don't think she'll back out. "I assume that the 3 of us as a whole are needed in order to take the test?" questioned the whiskered genin as Am brought them their first bowls of ramen. The jonin was slightly taken aback at both Naruto's calm demeanor and his observant question. "That's correct. If even one of you does not want to take them, then the other 2 can't take them either. It's meant to be taken as a team." The blonde finished his first bowl and nodded to his teacher. "I think we'll be taking it, sensei. As you said. Sasuke is eager, Sakura will most likely agree, and you should know my answer." The female ramen chef brought him his second bowl with a smile that he returned before he turned to face the one-eyed jonin. "The question I have for you, sensei, is if you think we are all ready." "Sasuke is ready due to having been trained at a young age, and I'm confident in my own abilities. But what of Sakura?" "What do you mean?" Naruto frowned and elaborated. "She shows no interest in training, knows nothing more than the academy jutsu and tree walking, and lacks any sort of drive save for trying to get Sasuke to notice her. How do any of these reasons make you believe she's ready?" Kakashi gave a slight frown at both the harsh reasoning and the truth in them. "You should have a bit more faith in your team, Naruto." "Why? Since when have they ever shown faith in me or ever valued my opinion?" "Admitted sensei, they don't like me and would rather leave me to the wolves than risk their lives for me." "What about when Sasuke stopped those senbon from hitting you back in Nami?" The blonde scoffed and retorted, "I'm willing to bet my chances of becoming Hokage that he did that to put himself in a position to acquire his Sharingan. He got them on the mission, right sensei? He probably risked his life for me, just so that he could get them." Try as he might, the jonin couldn't find any argument against his student's reasoning. His uncovered eye looked into Naruto's blue orbs and saw nothing more than distrust and a small level of anger. "Look Naruto, I know that you have more than enough reasons to doubt anyone ever helping you. But can't you at least try to give them a chance? You'll need to rely on each other for these exams." Turning back to his bowl, the genin replied, "I won't promise you that I'll put my faith in them, but I'll tolerate taking this stupid test with them." "That's all I ask of you, Naruto," stated the jonin as he placed enough money on the counter for the 4 bowls of ramen they both consumed as a whole. He then placed the sign-up form on the counter and left the stand. Am, who had been eavesdropping on their conversation, asked her surrogate little brother, "Do you think your team will pass, Naruto?" He sighed with a slight sag of his shoulders and answered, "It's hard to say. If my guess for what will happen is right, then Sasuke will declare himself as team leader, while Sakura will agree to anything he decides. Since I need them to take these exams, I'll just have to deal with it." The ramen chef placed a comforting hand on top of his and gently squeezed it. "I'm sure you'll do fine. Tusan and I believe in you, Naruto." The blonde looked to her with a small smile and nodded. "Thanks, Amni." He then stood up and made his way out of the stand. "Tell Pops that I said hi for me," he called out as he left. He carefully pulled the hood of his coat over his head as he weaved through the crowded streets and made his way to the Hokage Tower. He wanted to talk with the Sandame and finally ask him a much-desired question. He made it to the receptionist after battling through the crowds for nearly 5 minutes, and she let him in with a small smile. While not overly supportive of him, she was civil with the Uzumaki and treated him like any other person. Naruto was then led inside the office and entered to the side of the age cage seated behind his desk with stacks of paperwork seated on top. "Naruto, what can I do for you?" asked the man with a smile. The blonde took a seat on the chair in front of the desk and looked to the Hokage with a straight face. "I have a question for you, old man." "Of course. What is it you want to ask me?" "What is my relationship to Uzumaki Mido and Uzumaki Kushina?" The old man raised a brow at the unexpected question and took his pipe out of his top desk drawer. What brought this on, Naruto? He asked as he lit his pipe and began to smoke from it. About 2 years ago, I came across this journal that told me about Mito-sama and Kushina-san. I was curious as to who they were and tried to find some information on them. Unfortunately, I was only able to get info on Mito-sama and couldn't find anything on Kushina-san. What I read about Mito-sama was basically what they told us in the academy. That she was the Shodame's wife and in Uzumaki. So, you wish to know about Kushina then? Not just that. I want to know what my connection is to them, Jiji. They're Uzumaki, and my last name is Uzumaki. I also found out that there was a clan of Uzumaki. His blue eyes met the brown eyes of the village leader, and he asked, am I from their clan, Jiji, or is me sharing their surname just a coincidence? The Cage sighed tiredly due to the depth the answer had concerning the genin before him. He set his pipe down and leaned his chin on top of his interlaced hands above his desk. What you must understand before I answer you, Naruto, is that this information is incredibly classified. I need your word that you won't speak of this unless I give you explicit permission. Do you understand? Nodding, the genin replied, yes, I understand and I give you my word, Jiji. Very well, then you asked what your connection to them is. The answer is that you share their clan name because you are all of that clan. You're in Uzumaki, plain and simple. Now, Mito-sama was indeed the wife of Hashirama Dono, but she was also a holder of the Kyuubi much like you are. Naruto made a feigned expression of shock at the statement. He already knew that, but he just wanted to hear the man he saw as a grandfather tell him. What of Kushina-san? The elderly Hokage chuckled at him and commented, you have no idea how strange it is to hear you refer to your mother by her name. Now, the feigned shock became genuine on the blonde's face. What? The old man nodded with a sigh. Yes, she is in actuality your mother. She died during the night the Kyuubi attacked, that's why she isn't here now. He gave the blonde a regretful look and said, I'm so sorry for not telling you this sooner, but I wasn't sure if you were ready to know at the time. The blonde's mind was reeling at the news. His mother was the second holder of the fox and died the night he was born. She must have died when the fox somehow broke free. I want to ask Jiji about it, but then he'd grow suspicious as to how Inuka-chan was the previous Jinchuriki, he thought to himself before another thought came to him. What about my father? What happened to him? He perished that night as well as he helped the village keep the fox at bay. I'm sorry, Naruto. I see, he murmured quietly before he looked to the Sandaime anxiously. Did they love me, Jiji? Of course they loved you, Naruto. When Kushina was pregnant with you, she was happier than I had ever seen her before. Your father practically shouted from the Hokage mountain that his wife was pregnant and did so again when they found out that you were a boy. The blonde chuckled at that as he wiped away a stray tear. Thanks for telling me, Jiji. It was now trouble, my boy. Now, perhaps you can answer a few questions for me. At the teen's nod, he asked, where exactly did you find that journal and who gave you those clothes you're wearing? Now it was the blonde's turn to sigh as he rested his elbows on his knees and waved his hand at the old man. You might as well get comfortable, Jiji. It's kind of a long story. I'm skip. 2 hours. And then I got some new clothes and was sent back to the shrine. After that, I took the scroll and Yuzu Hide and a book on some guy called the Rakuto Sennin before I headed back to the village, finished the Uzumaki as he was now standing from his chair. The Sandaime smoked from his pipe he had resumed using after the first hour and thought over what had been said. Only you, my boy, would be fortunate enough to stumble across your clan's old shrine and find not just Mito-sama's journal, but a summoning contract. The blonde rubbed his head sheepishly at that, making the old man chuckle. So, you have the support of these ponies and passed their test to be their summoner. You also received some new clothes from them. Yeah, they were all really nice and supportive during my test. 2 of them even hugged me when I was beginning to feel down. The Cage smiled at that. Well, I'm glad that you found something to associate you with your old clan more. If you wish, you could also wear their hide to show your connection to them. It's your decision. The genin nodded and the old man continued, now, you know of your connection to the 2 Uzumaki you read about and know that one of them was your mother. Remember that this information is classified and cannot be repeated to anyone without my permission. However, in the event that I pass on from this world, then the information is yours to handle however you wish. Understand? Yay, I understand, Jiji, replied the blonde with a bow as he made to leave the office. Before he reached the door, he turned back and said, and as a thanks for helping me, I'll tell you how to deal with your paperwork. He nearly busted up laughing at the near childish look of eager of the old man's face. Try using Kage Bunshin to get it done faster, Jiji, he suggested as he left. For the next 10 minutes after Naruto left, the receptionist heard a continuous banging from the Hokage's office, followed by consecutive shouts of, stupid. Academy, the next day. Naruto was leaning against a tree in front of the academy as he waited for his teammates to show up. It was the day of the Chunin exams, and the blonde still couldn't keep the look of annoyance off of his face as he thought of how his sensei gave him, and possibly the other two, the sign-up forms the day before the exams. I wonder if Pinky would mind helping me prank him for that. He internally mused before he noticed his Uchiha teammate walking up, followed closely by his civilian-raised one. With a resigned sigh, he pushed himself off of the tree and thought, showtime. What's with the new clothes, dope? Asked the Uchiha with a smug look. Finally decided to actually try to be competent. The blonde didn't grace him with an answer and just made his way inside. Sasuke took that as a win, while Sakura was annoyed that the blonde ignored her Sasuke-kun. Once they went inside and climbed up a flight of stairs, they saw many genin from various villages gathered around a door marked 301. Naruto rolled his eyes at the attempt to deceive the potential test takers and made to walk past the others before he heard Sasuke open his big mouth. Take down that genjutsu. We're heading for room 301, not 201. Naruto slapped a hand to his forehead in frustration and tuned out what had happened next in favor of heading up the stairs to the real room 301. He leaned on the wall outside the door for over 10 minutes before Kakashi appeared in a shunshin and his teammates walked up. One looking worse for wear. Well, I'm glad that you all made it here, Kakashi praised. I was worried that I'd have to deny you entry. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the Jonin in annoyance while he explained to the other two what would have happened if all three of them didn't show. With his explanation finished, he wished them luck and left, allowing them to step through the doors and into the examination room. They were instantly glared at by the various genin, making Sakura nervous, Sasuke eager, and Naruto just plain bored. He'd seen worse glares from the villages, since their glares were full of hatred, while the glares the genin gave were of annoyance. Sasuke-kun. Cried a girl as the Uchiha had to suddenly deal with extra weight on his back. A blonde teen dressed in purple was hugging him from behind, making Sakura grow incredibly irritated. "Be no pig, get off of Sasuke-kun," she yelled. "Make me," billboard brow. Retorted the blonde as she blew a raspberry like a 5-year-old. Naruto rolled his eyes at them and just pulled out the book on the Rikudo Sennin and began reading. He was still surprised that the Sandaime didn't take it from him, but he wasn't going to complain. Troublesome, muttered a lazy voice as the blonde Uzumaki gave a sideways glance to Ino's teammate, Nara Shikamaru. Next to the lazy genin was Akamichi Choji, a heavisate genin with a heart as big as his appetite. "So, you're here too, Naruto?" The whiskered genin just nodded as he went back to reading his book. Shikamaru was one of the only genin who saw through his idiot facade. Aburame Shino being the other. "Yahoo, we found you!" yelled an exuberant teen as he and his teammates approached the rookies of the Leaf. This was Inyazuka Kiba, a boisterous genin from Naruto's graduating class. Flanking him were Hyuga Hinata, a shy but kind-hearted girl, and Shino, a silent but intelligent teen. "Quiet down," admonished a new voice, making Naruto turn his gaze away from his book and see a silver-haired Konoha genin wearing purple clothes and some glasses. "You're making a scene and basically putting a target on your backs." "Oh yay, who asked you?" retorted the Inyazuka with a bark of support from his canine partner, Akamaru. The genin sighed as he introduced himself. "My name is Yakushi Kabuto, and you can call me your go-to guy for these exams. I've taken them at least 7 times and failed each time. So you should have an idea of their difficulty." Hinata poked her fingers together nervously. Do you think that it was a good idea to sign up for these if they're that difficult?" Kabuto smirked and pulled out what looked like playing cards. "Tell you what. Since you guys are obviously rookies, I'll help you out. These cards have information on any genin you're interested in as well as info as to which villages are taking these exams." "What villages are having genin take the exams?" questioned Naruto, making the others turn to him. Most were wondering what was up with the new clothes, while Hinata blushed at his more professional look. Kabuto pulled out a card and had his chakra reveal its contents, showing the rookies the ratio of participating genin between the villages. "Well, it appears that Suna, Kumo, Kiri, Kusa, Aim, and a new village called Odo have genin participating with the Konoha genin. Of course, I doubt Odo will do all that well since they're still new and practically unheard of." Behind them in the crown of waiting genin was an Odo team with slight scowls on their faces for being brushed off so easily. Naruto felt a small tingle on the back of his mind and looked to the crowd with narrowed eyes. He couldn't help but feel as if something bad was going to come from it. Sasuke then stepped up and had Kabuto give him information on Rock Lee of Konoha and a Suna genin named Subaku no Gara. The veteran genin pulled out 2 cards and had their contents show themselves. "Okay, first is Rock Lee of Konoha. He's a student of Mito Gai, while his teammates are Hyuga Niji and Higurashi Tenten. He lacks any noteworthy skills other than a highly extensive level of Taijutsu. It's not that surprising actually since his teacher is the best Taijutsu using jonin of the village. Next is Subaku no Gara of Suna. He's a student of a jonin named Baki, while his teammates are Subaku no Tamari and Subaku no Kankuro, his older siblings. His skills are unknown, but the one thing that makes him stand out is that he has returned from every mission his team has taken unscathed. Naruto perked up at that and looked to the picture of the Suna genin before he searched the room for him. When he found him and the two locked eyes, Naruto felt another tug on the back of his mind that reeked of negativity. This guy he's definitely not one to take lightly or piss off, he mentally noted before he heard quick movement and saw the Odo team try to get Kabuto. The blonde saw the veteran genin dodge with ease before his glasses cracked and he fell to his knees, releasing the contents of his stomach in the process. Damn sound-based attacks. Fitting since their village is named Sound. The next thing that happened was a large plume of smoke appearing at the head of the room near the board. From it came a man dressed in black clothing and many chunin dressed in tan Konoha uniforms. "Alright you little shits, my name is Marino Ibiki and I will be your first examiner," yelled out the man in black. "You three of Odo, this is your only warning. No fighting amongst the genin unless we tell you it's permitted." The Odo genin dressed like a mummy gave a look that hardly seemed apologetic. "Sorry about that. We're just dealing with last-minute jitters." Ibiki grunted in annoyance before he had the genin all take a number and take their designated seats. Naruto found himself seated in the center row next to the retied Suna genin. "Swell," he mentally thought sarcastically. "Alright maggots, the first exam is a written test." Many students groaned at that while Sasuke and Sakura glared in Naruto's direction. Said blonde mentally sighed at the lack of faith from his teammates. "Now, these are the rules for this exam. Each genin team passes and fails as a whole, each genin has 10 points at the start and a genin will be sent out of the room if caught cheating 3 times along with their teammates. There are 9 questions on the paper, while the 10th and final will be brought up afterwards. Each wrong answer will have you lose 1 of your 10 points and the final score will be the accumulative of your score and the scores of your teammates. Any questions?" One genin raised a hand only to have a kunai embed itself on the desk he sat in. "Well that's too damn bad. No questions. Period. These are the rules and they will be followed as they are. Now, pick up your pencils and begin." Almost all of the genin picked up their pencils immediately. Naruto gave Gaara a sideways glance and saw that the retied hadn't even budged. He just sat there with his eyes closed as if he was a statue. The blonde shook his head and focused on his paper. Within a span of 2 minutes, he frowned at the inability to answer any of the questions. These questions could stump even Jonin. How the hell does he expect us to, he thought before what Ibiki said smacked him in the face. "Wait a minute, he said that we would be sent out after being caught 3 times. That gives us 2 freebies before we get the boot. Could it really be so simple?" Deciding to go with his gut, he glanced around the room and saw someone seated in the row in front of him with a test paper that was over halfway filled. Going out on a limb, he took out a smoke bomb from his ninja pouch and held it in his right fist. He casually had it roll off of his desk and near his target before he made a hidden hand seal and had the bomb detonate. Smoke filled the room and he quickly swapped papers with his target before he made a face of faint confusion. Ibiki, having seen through it all, merely smirked at the blonde's plan and did nothing. It was gutsy, risky, and stupid. But it was also the correct way to go about the test. Not bad Uzumaki, not bad at all. Many of the other genin were soon discovering what the blonde Uzumaki had and began to use their respective skills to get the answers. Those with Taijutsu used them to copy the movements of other test takers or see the answers they needed. Those who were book smart, like Sakura and Shikamaru, had no real issue putting down a few answers. Kiba and Shino used their respective animal companions to help them find the answers. Ino waited for Sakura to finish her test before she used her clan's jutsu to invade her mind and body. She then memorized the answers and returned to her own body before entering Choji's and writing the answers for him. Tenten helped out Lee with the use of wires and mirrors hanging on the ceiling to look at the reflections of test papers. The Odo genin used chakra to enhance their hearing and follow the flow of writing from other test takers on sound alone. Kankuro feigned having a need to use the restroom and had a chunin take him. Ibiki easily saw that the chunin was in actuality the Suna genin's puppet, but he kept quiet. Tamari patiently waited for her brother to return with the answers written on a small scroll as they planned using gestures. As for Gaara, he used sand to make a third eye that flew through the room and gazed at the answers for Gaara to write down. When Kankuro returned, Ibiki called out, "Alright, pencils down." The genin all complied before he continued, "Okay, the final question has an extra rule." This was met with much complaining and yells before he silenced them all with a burst of killing intent. "Shut your damn mouths. I'm in charge here, so I make the rules. Now, the extra rule is in truth a choice. You choose whether or not you take the question or not." "Why wouldn't we take it?" scoffed Akiri genin, making Ibiki give a cruel smirk. "Well, if you take it and fail then you basically give up ever becoming a chunin for your entire career." "Say what?" yelled Iname Kinoichi. "That's fucked up, you bastard," cried Kiba with Akamaru barking in agreement. Other genin voiced their disapproval with the extra rule before the man shut them up again. "Listen, your village leaders all know of this rule and have agreed to it. So, your choice is now in front of you. Those who do not wish to take the question, leave now and take your teammates with you." Within the span of 5 minutes, over half of the teams taking the test left the room. They had looks of regret and worry on their faces, making Naruto grow concerned about his chances. He looked to his teammates and saw Sasuke giving a facade of calm that was easily noticeable while Sakura looked incredibly nervous. Her green eyes locked with his blue ones, and he slowly shook his head, making her look at him as if he were insane. He ignored that look as he faced the front again. "So, still a few of you left, huh?" asked Ibiki rhetorically. "Well, not much left to do no except pass you." The silence of the test takers reigned over the room, making the examiner and various chunin smirk. Finally, it was broken by Kiba standing from his seat and pointing at Ibiki accusingly. "What the fuck, man? You scare the crap out of us and make us choose to take the test only to just pass us." "That's correct, brat," answered the bear of a man. "There was no real 10th question. It was merely to test you psychologically and see if you had the mentality to put aside everything for the sake of the mission. There will be times when you take a mission with incredibly high risks and you're given the choice to go through with it or not. Showing that you're willing to do it proves that you have the mentality of a chunin who is willing to face the risks," he stated as he removed his bandana, showing his burned and scarred head, "even if the risks scar you." Damari raised her hand and asked, "Then what was the point of the other 9 questions?" Ibiki chuckled at her, making her growl in annoyance. "The point was to test you all on your skills in information gathering. A common mission chunin will be assigned. You see, my testing methods were not wasted in the slightest on you genin and you all prevailed. So, you all passed the first exam." As soon as he finished, a black bundle crashed into the room and burst open. Kunai stabbed the corners of the opened cloth to the walls and allowed the genin to read the banner it was revealed to be. The second examiner. The sexy and single Mitarashi Anko. Read the banner while a woman with purple hair stood in front of it. She had her hair styled in a fan-like ponytail, had brown pupil-less eyes, and a killer body. She wore blue shinobi sandals, an orange skirt that fell just above her knees, a mesh armor shirt, and a tan trench coat over it all. "Alright you little brats, this isn't time to celebrate," exclaimed the woman before she pointed out the window she broke through. "The second exam begins now, so follow me." Almost all of the genin looked to her like she was crazy, while some stayed quiet. Naruto couldn't help but think that Pinkie Pie would enjoy this kind of entrance and made a mental note to tell her about it later. Ibiki poked his head out from behind the banner and muttered, "You're early again." She turned her gaze from the window and glared at him before she looked to the clock. Her glare turned into a sheepish grin when she saw that he was right and she rubbed her head in embarrassment. "Whoops. I thought I was on time." Ibiki sighed in slight annoyance while Naruto and a few others chuckled. "At any rate, you have your work cut out for you, Anko. These genin are tougher than they look." "Is that so?" asked the woman with a growing grin. "Well, I guarantee that this number will be cut in half by the time they're done with my test. Now, hurry up and follow me, you little brats." She exclaimed as she jumped out of the window with the genin quickly following her. They all traveled to training ground 44, where many other chunin, and even 2 Anbu, were waiting for them. One of the chunin walked up to Anko and said, "Mitarashi-san, we are ready when you are." "Glad to hear it," she replied before she turned to the genin. "This is training ground 44, otherwise known as the Forest of Death. It is here where your second exam will take place." "And what exactly is the second exam?" asked an aimed genin. The Takubetsu Jonin smirked at the question. "You can think of this little test as a beefed-up game of capture the flag. Each of your teams will get either an Earth Scroll or a Heaven Scroll to guard. Your objective is to get the scroll you do not have and bring both to the central tower in the forest before 5 days pass, or 120 hours. If any of your teammates if left behind in the forest or dies, you will be disqualified. And if you open any of the scrolls before you bring them both to the tower, you will be disqualified. Understand?" Many of the genin nodded and were then given waivers to sign, so the leaf wouldn't be responsible for their deaths. Once a team had all of their members sign a waiver, then they were given a scroll. Naruto's team was given an Earth Scroll to hold on to. Something Sasuke declared he would do. Sakura was quick to agree while Naruto just stayed quiet so that he wouldn't have to deal with them getting mad at him. While waiting for the other teams to get their scrolls, Naruto moved out of sight and went through a few hand seals before he bit his right thumb and slammed his palm on the ground. "Kuchius no jutsu," he muttered quietly so that he wouldn't be heard. From the smoke came Rainbow Dash, who looked confused as to why she was there. "Hey Naruto, what's up?" asked the Pegasus. "Hey Dash. I need your help for this part of my exam." "What exam?" "We're in the middle of the second test of the Chunin exams and we're being sent into this forest." I need you to go inside and wait for me to enter with my team. When we do, I need you to tail us and watch our backs. Think you can do that?" She smirked and spread her wings out fully. "Not a problem, Blondie. Just leave it to me," she exclaimed before she entered the forest in a blue blur. Luckily for Naruto and Dash, none of the Chunin noticed, which allowed her to wait for Naruto and his team to enter without an issue. "Alright, now that everyone has their scrolls, let me give you all one last piece of advice," exclaimed Enko, getting the attention of the genin. "Don't go dying on me because I don't want to waste my time looking for your carcasses. Now, move your asses. Test 2 has now begun." The gates to the forest all opened and the genin raced inside to begin their test. Dash grinned at the thought of getting to fight alongside her summoner and quickly began following him and his team. Said summoner discreetly looked back and winked at Dash before he refocused on the path ahead. Let the games begin. Chapter 3. Examination Point 2, Forest of Death. Team 7 leaped through the trees of the infamous Forest of Death as soon as the second exam started. Unknown to two of its members, a certain Pegasus was right behind them, keeping an eye on her blonde summoner. Rainbow Dash could easily feel the hostility between the members of the team. Naruto couldn't tolerate them because they belittled him all of the time, and they couldn't tolerate Naruto for being weaker than they were. The Pegasus shook her head with pity for her summoner. Clearly he got the short end of the stick in terms of teammates. And all because he's a Jinchuriki and hated by his fellow villagers. It's not fair, she mentally fumed. She couldn't understand why he didn't seem to care about the hatred towards him. If she was in his shoes, she'd have most likely lashed out and gave into her frustration a long time ago. But then again, that wouldn't be the best way to go about it, she thought with a sigh. Truly, her summoner had a will of iron to have held out for so long. "We need to stop," Naruto called out suddenly. "Why dope?" asked Sasuke in annoyance. He didn't like having Naruto try and tell him what to do, especially when the blonde was just a no-name loser. "I have some business to take care of," was the blonde's answer. "Business? We're in a forest, you baka. What kind of business could you possibly need to take care of?" The Uzumaki rolled his eyes in annoyance and answered in a tone that would seem like he was speaking to a naive child. "I need to take a leak, Sakura. What other business could I be talking about?" Sakura blushed at his answer before she growled at him in anger. "Gross. You don't just say that to a lady, you disgusting pig." Ash really didn't like how Sakura was talking the blonde. Even she could tell what he meant, and the pinkette was seriously overreacting. How does Naruto put up with her? "Just hurry up, dope," Sasuke ordered as they dropped to the forest floor and the blonde walked into the foliage. As soon as he was gone, Sasuke leaped back into the trees with Sakura quickly following him. Ash glared at them from her position and muttered jerks before she followed after her summoner. She didn't have to go far and found him seated near a small pond, watching the small fish swimming in the water. "They just ditched you, Blondie," she informed him. I knew they would, which is why I made up that excuse to leave them," he replied while patting the ground next to him. Dash knew what he meant and sat down next to him. "So, care to tell me about yourself?" "Where did that come from?" asked the Pegasus in amusement. He shrugged and replied, "I just thought that we could get to know one another since you and the others are my new partners. If you don't want to talk, that's fine too." "Nah, I don't mind, Blondie. So, how did you want to do this?" "Just tell me your name, likes, dislikes, and dream for the future." She nodded at that and began. "The name's Rainbow Dash. I like flying, fixing the weather in Ponyville, my friends, and doing stuff that's cool. I dislike boring things, jerks, those who abuse their power, and those who mistreat others. My goal is to meet some pony special and start a family." "That's a nice dream, Dash. I'm sure you'll meet somebody who means a lot to you," the Uzumaki said sincerely, earning a grateful look from the Pegasus. "Thanks, Blondie, your turn now." "Okay, my name is Uzumaki Naruto. I like to read, study Fuinjutsu, the rare few people who care about me, and finally you and the others for helping me. I dislike those who see me as the fox, those who hurt my precious people, being unable to stand up for myself, rapists and perverts. My dream for the future." He stopped, making Dash look to him in concern. "It was to be Hokage, but I know it won't ever happen. Now, my dream is just to find a place where people accept me and I can live in peace." Ash looked at him sadly and was about to speak before they both felt the ground rumble and heard a loud hiss. They looked across the pond and their eyes widened in shock as a giant brown snake slithered from the foliage, easily towering over them. "Not good," muttered Naruto as he pulled out a kunai and quickly wrapped a seal tag on it. "Dash, I need you to help me get to its head." "On it, Naruto," she replied as she grabbed the back of his coat with her teeth and tossed him onto her back. In a blur of speed, she shot up into the air before she dive-bombed toward the giant snake. Naruto had her roll forward until her back was facing the snake's head and he kicked off with the kunai in his hand, glowing a bright blue. Unfortunately, the snake had quick reflexes and suddenly lunged its head upward with its jaws wide open. Naruto stared into the snake's open maw and scowled at the obvious outcome. "Shit," he mumbled as the snake clamped its jaw shut and swallowed him whole. "Naruto!" cried out Dash in worry as she rapidly flew at the snake and kicked its body repeatedly with her hooves. "Let him go," she shouted between kicks. Inside the snake, Naruto hissed at the burning feeling of the digestive fluids and stabbed his kunai into the skin. The seal tag on the knife lit up before a burst of electricity surged through the snake's body, making it convulse in pain. He then formed a cross seal and yelled out, "Taj Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, mass shadow clones." From Dash's point of view, she saw the belly of the convulsing snake slowly expand further and further to the point that it looked like it would pop from the pressure. Unable to take the pain from being overstretched, the snake disappeared in a plume of smoke, leaving nearly 100 Naruto clones to fall to the ground, with their clothes covered in fluids. Ponyville, Rarity's boutique. A certain white-coated unicorn suddenly stiffened and narrowed her eyes. "Some pony has ruined the clothes I have made for them. When I get my hooves on them." She left the threat hanging while she shook her right front hoof threateningly. "But Naruto and Rainbow Dash." As he dispelled his clones and Dash landed next to him, Naruto pulled at his clothes and sighed. "Dash. Yay. Rarity's gonna kill me, isn't she?" he deadpanned. The Pegasus's answer was a sheepish look as she rubbed her head with one of her front hooves. 10 minutes later. "Okay, I think that's the best I can do," Naruto muttered as he was now standing in the clearing with his clothes soaked from the water used to clean up the digestive fluids. "Hold still, Blondie. I'll dry you up," Dash stated as she began to fly around him at high speed, forming a small funnel of rainbow-colored wind. When the funnel died down, Naruto was dry, while his naturally spiky hair grew even wilder. He shook his head to fix his hair and said, "Thanks Dash. Now, let's go find my teammates." "Right," murmured Dash with a small frown, still remembering that they ditched Naruto who could have died by that snake. The Jinchuriki and Pegasus blurred through the trees in search of Sasuke and Sakura, the blonde somehow knowing where to go due to a feeling in the back of his head. He sensed a dark and cruel energy source and couldn't help but think that his teammates were near it. They finally stopped when they were around 30 feet away and peered through a bushy tree branch. They saw Sasuke and Sakura standing on another tree branch across from a woman with a kusa headband on her forehead. Naruto couldn't stop the bead of sweat that formed and rolled down his cheek as he felt that the source of the cruel energy was from the woman. "Who are you?" Sasuke asked in fear, surprising Naruto greatly. "What do you want with us?" The woman chuckled, sending chills down the backs of the 3 genin and 1 Pegasus. "Ah, such good questions from you Sasuke," commented the woman with a distinct hiss when she said the Uchiha's name. "You look so much like your brother, Itachi." Naruto frowned at that. How did this woman know of the infamous killer of the Uchiha clan? "You know of Itachi?" asked Sasuke, his fear replaced by rage. "Where is he? Tell me right now." Now, Sasuke, I still need to answer your earlier questions," chastised the woman with a cruel smirk. Then Naruto shivered Dash. "This chick is creepy." "Yeah," agreed the blonde as he kept his attention on the conversation. "As for your first question. My name is Orochimaru," said the woman in a much more masculine voice. Naruto froze and started to pale in fear at the name. His mind worked into overdrive as he thought over his options and any kind of strategy for him and his teammates to get out alive. However, one thing came to his mind first. "Dash," he began, getting her attention. "I want you to dispel yourself right now." "What?" she asked in shock. "Why would you have me?" "This guy is dangerous, Dash. Really dangerous. That snake we dealt with earlier was one of his summoned creatures. I want you to get out of here right now." "I'm not leaving you, Naruto," she adamantly refused. "I won't do that to you. I won't be like your so-called teammates." He smiled sadly at her loyalty, easily seeing that she really was in touch with her harmonic element. He then surprised her by hugging her and she slowly returned it unaware of him holding up a half-rammed seal. "I'm sorry, Dash," he whispered, making her eyes grow wide. "Naruto, don't," she tried to yell, but it was halted by her disappearing in a plume of smoke. "I hope that, if I live through this, you can forgive me," Dash muttered Naruto as he readied another kunai with a seal tag and made his way closer. He saw that Orochimaru was finishing his explanation as to why he wanted Sasuke, something about needing his eyes, and mentally prepped himself to strike. "Everyone, if I don't make it out alive, just wanted to say thank you," he mentally prayed as he envisioned the people close to him. Visions of the Sandame, the Ichiraku chefs, and the ponies filled his mind, followed by shadowed silhouettes of 2 figures meant to represent his parents. "Thank you for seeing me as Uzumaki Naruto and treating me like a normal person. This might be my last battle, so I will go down fighting to protect you all." Wiping away the stray tear that threatened to spill, Naruto set his face into a determined frown and leaped out of the tree he was in, gaining the attention of the 3 below him. Orochimaru narrowed his eyes slightly at the sight of him. The Kyuubi brat probably got lucky and escaped my snake. He shouldn't be much of a bother, thought the disguised Sannin before he saw Naruto throw down a kunai and fly through hand seals. Kunai Cage Bunshin, kunai shadow clones. Cried the blonde as the single kunai multiplied into 20 and he held up his hands in a ram seal. Fuinjutsu. Rihara, sealing arts. Lightning field. The seals on the kunai all lit up and lines of electricity linked between them all, making a literal web of lightning that was quickly descending down toward Orochimaru. Said Snake Man frowned at the technique before he disappeared in a swirl of leaves, letting the lightning web cleanly slice through the tree branch he was on, letting the scorched pieces fall to the forest floor. He reappeared on another branch away from the damage with an impressed look on his face. Not bad, however, I thought he was supposed to be incompetent. Naruto landed on the tree branch his teammates were on and readied a kunai with a different seal tag on it. Sasuke, Sakura, I need your help if we want to get out of here alive. Alright. He asked and was met with silence. He froze in shock before he slowly turned his head to look over his shoulder and saw that they were gone. They left me gang. He mentally raged while Orochimaru cruelly laughed at him. Isn't that something? Asked the man between laughs. You risk your life to help them and they leave you to die. Like a pack of wolves leaving the weakest link. Naruto didn't respond, too angry at how foolish he was. I can't believe I actually thought they'd stick around to help me, I'm such a dumbass. Why the hell would they care about me? Well, I suppose I should commend you on your impressive display earlier, Naruto. The blonde broke out of his thoughts as he heard his name. How do you know me? The Sannin chuckled as he removed the face of the woman he was impersonating, revealing pure white skin and yellow, snake-like eyes. I know quite a bit about you, my boy. More than you even know. He chuckled again as the blonde tensed and readied his kunai. Haven't you ever wondered who your parents were, Naruto? Of course I have, retorted the Uzumaki. What orphan wouldn't? True, but what if I told you that I know exactly who they are? I already know who they are. Naruto yelled back, half lying since he only knew of his mother. You're not a very good liar, Naruto, retorted the snake before he looked thoughtful. Well, that's not entirely true. You seem to only be partially lying to me, so tell me, which parent do you know? If I had to guess, I would assume that it's your mother Kushina. Naruto tensed again and threw his kunai frantically at the snake, but it was easily avoided with a lazy lean of the head. I see I hit the nail right on the head. So, you still don't know your father? Sarutobi-sensei must really not have a lot of faith in you if he kept that from you. Shut up. You don't know anything. Screamed the blonde in anger while his arms began to burn for some reason. What's this feeling? It feels like something wants to burst out of my arms. Oh, but I do know, Naruto, I know the truth about who your father is. He's the Leaf's greatest hero. The one who turned the tides in the Third Great War, he mockingly stated. Naruto couldn't think of who the snake was referring to, since the pain in his arms was intensifying dramatically. Their father was Namikaze Minato. The Yondaime Hokage, declared the snake with a cruel smirk, making Naruto freeze in place. And no, he couldn't be Nada, muttered the blonde in denial, but his rational side kicked in again and laid out the facts. If the Yondaime was his father, then using his son to hold the Kyuubi made much more sense. Plus, they looked alike in almost every way save for Naruto's whisker markings. Do you see it now, Naruto? Questioned the snake as he pulled out a kunai. Your village hates you while they worship Minato for making you the scapegoat they despise every waking moment. Sarutobi-sensei knew. How could he not? Oh, but don't worry, you won't have to deal with the hate anymore, stated the Sannin in a mock-caring tone, because I'll end your suffering right now. Naruto's arm screamed in agony, while his instincts had him swing against the incoming threat. The result was Naruto swinging an open hand at Orochimaru while the man was at least 10 feet away. However, it wasn't a wasted swing since golden chains erupted from his skin and flew at the snake, who narrowly dodged with a shocked expression. Chakra chains. But that's impossible. Kushina didn't get them until she was a jonin. Mentally raged the man as he considered his options. Naruto fell to his knees as the chains retracted back into his skin, his arms numb from the sudden release of the burning pain he was feeling earlier. As soon as the chains were full reabsorbed into his skin, his arm fell like dead weight while he gasped for air. Orochimaru narrowed his eyes in thought over the new outcome. Killing the Uzumaki would be an easy feat to do now. Child's play since the blonde was wide open. But a part of his intelligent mind told him to let the boy live. It even told him to give the team the scroll his team needed to pass. Maybe this could work to my advantage. My original self has already given Sasuke the curse mark and knocked out the Kyuubi brat's teammates. Maybe Sasuke's inevitable jealousy of Naruto will help fuel the curse mark. Yes, I believe this will work out just fine. He stepped up to the defenseless blonde who didn't even acknowledge his presence. Orochimaru couldn't help but see himself in the Uzumaki. Alone, orphaned, yet still able to surprise his opponents and show incredible feats of skill and power. It was obvious that the team was much more than he let on. Being able to deceive even Kabuto was a testament to that. He pulled out the heaven scroll that Team 7 needed and tossed it in front of the Uzumaki. Your teammates are about half a mile north of here. Consider that scroll a gift for your interesting display and bravery. Not many people would choose to stand their ground in my presence. I'll be sure to keep a close eye on your future progress, Naruto, so do try and stay alive for me. With his piece said, the snake dispersed into mud, showing that he was nothing more than a Tsuchi Bunshin, mud clone. Naruto's hand numbly moved and grasped the scroll before he pocketed it and stood shakily. His mind was still reeling at the facts given to him and the pain his apparent new skill caused him. His body moved on autopilot as he began to head to where Orochimaru said his team was. When he arrived, he saw the two of them slumped against a tree trunk out cold. He wordlessly made 2 clones and had them carry his teammates and follow him as he made his way to the central tower. It took the rest of the day to get there, and Naruto was finally starting to regain his mental control from the shocking revelations he had received. He curiously looked to his surroundings and saw that he was inside the tower with a plaque in front of him that had a hidden lesson. The blonde scoffed at the simplicity of the answer, which was focusing on the skills you need improvement on. The body, earth, or the mind, heaven. He then opened both scrolls and tossed them to the floor, causing them to erupt into plumes of smoke that revealed Yumi no Iruka, the chunin who worked at the academy as an instructor. Naruto, glad to see you made it as early as you did. The first day, too. Not bad at all, he praised, only receiving a nod and thanks from the blonde before his clones presented his unconscious teammates. We ran into Orochimaru in the forest and they were knocked out. Be sure to tell the old man, Iruka-sensei. I need to be alone for a bit, informed the Uzumaki as he handed off his teammates to the stunned Chunin and made his way to one of the dorm rooms in the tower. Once inside, Naruto sighed and performed the seals needed to summon Dash before she appeared in a plume of smoke. Her eyes were wide in worry when she saw that they weren't in the forest, but they quickly softened when she saw that Naruto was alive. Anger soon took over and she used her tail to slap his face. The equivalent of a human woman using her hand. Naruto didn't seem fazed by it and merely let her strike him with a dead look in his eyes. Dash didn't seem to notice due to her anger. Damn it, Naruto. I told you that I wasn't going to leave you. And what do? You send me back and leave me worried sick. Then, you don't even summon me back until you apparently finished your test. What the hell is wrong with you, huh? He didn't respond and merely stood there with the same expression. Her eyes softened as she walked up to him and leaned down to look his downward gaze in the eye. Naruto? She asked in worry before she was suddenly pulled into a hug by a now tearful blonde. I'm so sorry, Dash, he whispered as his tears fell on her coat. Her anger was immediately extinguished by his sincere and regretful tone and she hugged him back with her wing. It's okay, Blondie, I forgive you, she whispered back. Their moment was interrupted by a sudden knock on the door. Naruto. It's Kakashi. I need to talk to you. Naruto looked at Dash who gave him a smile before her eyes glowed and she was surrounded by a swirl of color. When the swirl died down, she was transformed into a necklace with a pendant designed in the exact likeliness of her cutie mark. Naruto quickly put it on and tucked it into his vest before he opened his door. Sensei, what did you want to talk about? Kakashi gave his blonde student a worried frown and he asked, Naruto, is it true what Iruka just told me? Did you and the others run into Orochimaru? The blonde looked down and nodded, making the jonin sigh. What happened back there, Naruto? Naruto suddenly scowled and looked his sensei with betrayal in his eyes. I listened to you, that's what. Kakashi's eyes widened in surprise at the angered tone. I placed my trust in my teammates and they ditched me in that forest, not once, but twice. Once when I left to relieve myself and the next when I stopped Orochimaru from killing them back there. I placed my faith in them and hoped that they would back me up, but they left me to die. I'm still surprised that Orochimaru let me live back there. Kakashi's eyes grew wider with horror at every statement. He knew that their teamwork wasn't exactly good, but he never thought that they would just abandon their teammate and leave him to the wolves, so to speak. Naruto, Save it. Interrupted the rightfully angered blonde. I listened to you, even though I knew that they would never be there for me and I was left alone to die while they ran to save themselves. They didn't even care that they needed me to pass the test and just hightailed it out of there like cowards. The blonde's anger was slowly calling on a small amount of the Kyuubi's chakra, making him release killing intent. I've had it, Kakashi. I will never trust those two again and as soon as I can, I'm removing myself from this team. Kakashi tried to calm down the Uzumaki. Naruto, don't do anything rash. I'll talk to Hokage-sama and… No. I'm done, Kakashi, so don't try to stop me. I won't blame you for their actions, but I sure as hell will not have you try and save a team that obviously does not function as one. The jonin sighed dejectedly at his student, knowing that he was absolutely right. I'm so sorry, Naruto, I never imagined that they'd have done that to you, can you forgive me? Like I said earlier. I don't blame you, Sensei Naruto muttered. There's no need to forgive you for something you didn't do or have any control of. But, I will never forgive Sasuke or Sakura for what they did. I understand, and thank you for not blaming me, replied the Jonin. I still want to make it up for you since I know I could have taught you more than I did. So, if you ever need someone to train you, just come to me. Okay. Naruto gave his teacher a grateful smile and bowed. Thank you, Sensei. Kakashi gave him an eye smile and rubbed his head in a brotherly way. Don't mention it. Now, you should take the remaining 4 days to rest and prepare for the next test. You'll need it. I will, Sensei, replied the blonde as he re-entered his room and closed the door. Ash transformed back into her real form and gave him a reassuring smile. At least your teacher wants to try and make it up to you. Yay, hey Dash, can you have the others reverse summon me again? What for? Something tells me that I'm gonna need some more tricks up my sleeve for the next test, plus, I want to know if Celestia or Luna know what these are, he explained as he struggled to summon the chains he created earlier. Dash looked at the chains in wonder before she nodded and disappeared in a burst of smoke. Not even 5 minutes later, Naruto did the same. Central Tower Indoor Arena, 4 days later. Naruto stood next to the remaining genin as they waited for Anko to finish the second test. Team 7 to 10 and Kabuto's team had passed for Konoha, Gaara's team had passed for Suna, and the Oto team for their village. The blonde rubbed his arms as he remembered the training Celestia gave him for his chakra chains. The Alicorn knew exactly what they were and helped him figure out how to summon and utilize them more fluently. Luna helped as well by firing many blasts of Might and Dark Element chakra at him to have him ignore outside distractions and focus. After Naruto had informed the ponies of what happened in the Forest of Death, they were disappointed with his teammates, and Applejack was a few seconds short of having Naruto summon her so that she could mule kick them into next year. Luckily, depending on who you asked, Naruto was able to calm her down and tell the mares what he planned to do after the test. They were quick to support his decision. Rarity though did so after lecturing him about taking better care of his clothing. Another thing he did during his 4 days rest was enjoy a congratulatory party that was thrown for him by Pinky. Something he thanked her for with a grateful hug since he had never had anyone throw him any kind of celebration before. He was able to enjoy himself and have fun for the first time in a long time and it made the pink mare happy to help him do so. Ash had stuck to Naruto like glue after their little episode in the forest. She had grown incredibly fond of the teen and was able to easily call him a friend. She even followed him out of the summon realm and disguised herself as her necklace form so that she could stay close to him. The blonde was able to place seals on each of the ponies as well during his stay. The seals were connected to one he had on the back of his neck, which allowed them to communicate with one another mentally. However, it couldn't work across realms, but it was still incredibly useful. He was brought out of his reminiscing by Anko announcing, "Well brats, you have passed the second exam. So, we'll immediately move on to the next test or at least the event that will weed out the weaker links." "What are you talking about?" asked Ino with a frown. "Some of us just got here and are barely standing." "Not our problem," retorted the Takebetsu Jonin. "You knew what you were getting into when you signed up for these exams. Now, we will be having what is known as preliminary bouts to cut down the numbers some more. Too many of you have passed, so we need to weed out some more of you." She then looked at the 21 genin with a scrutinizing gaze, looking for anyone that seemed to be at risk due to their injuries. "However, from here on out you no longer have to worry about how your actions affect your team's future. It's every genin for his or herself. So, if there are any of you who think they can't continue, speak up and tell us now or else shut up and stay put." Only one genin raised his hand. Kabuto. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he felt a negative aura from him. The silver-haired teen was allowed to leave, which meant that there were a total of 20 genin remaining. 20, huh? That means that we'll be having a total of 10 matches and 10 maximum genin for the finals, Anko murmured to herself as a part of the wall behind her moved aside to show a screen. She spoke louder as she explained, "This device will be what decides your fate. The first 2 genin who will have their preliminary match will be." 2 rows of names randomly shuffled on the screen with a large VS. In between them both, the genin, their Jonin sensei, and the Sandaime who was there to watch the prelims stood and looked intently at the screen as the first 2 names revealed themselves. The result left many of them in shock. On the screen, it read, Uchiha Sasuke vs Hyuga Neji. Chapter 4. Prelims. Naruto stood next to Kakashi and Sakura as he stared down at the 2 genin about to take part in their preliminary battle. Uchiha Sasuke and Hyuga Neji. His crystal blue eyes focused on nothing else but the 2 top rookies of their years. Neji being the top rookie a year before Sasuke was. "Your genin may be of a renowned clan, Kakashi," began Neji's sensei Might Guy, "but Neji is much more experienced as a fighter." It was no secret that Guy and Kakashi had a long-standing rivalry between one another. Seeing their most recognized students going against one another was just another way to see which of the two jonin was better. That may be, but Sasuke has been known to surprise people, guy, retorted the masked jonin with his patented eye smile. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. Anko stood between the two genin and smirked at the glares they were giving one another. Alright, let's get this fight underway. Ryudibigen. She yelled before she moved out of their way. The two jumped back simultaneously and launched shuriken at one another at high speed. The ninja stars clashed against each other, the ringing of metal filling the room, before they rushed each other with kunai drawn. Both of them activated their respective dojutsu as they met in the center of the arena, their knives meeting in a flash of sparks. While they each had one hand holding the kunai they were using, they both tried to strike their opponent with their free hand. Sasuke went for a fierce punch while Neji went for a jab with 2 fingers. Only the Jonin, Hinata and Neji's teammates saw the significance of the jab and they all cringed as Neji's arm seemed to snake around the Uchiha's arm and strike him on the bicep. They both pushed away from each other while Sasuke held his aching arm and Neji smirked. What the hell? Asked the Uchiha in confusion as the pain didn't subside in the slightest. What did you do to me? Your chakra point on your arm. I struck it with my own chakra and forcefully cut it off from your chakra network. The pain you're feeling is the chakra trying desperately to flow even with a new roadblock. There's a reason why we Hyuga are more feared than the Uchiha and you're experiencing it now. Who would go against someone who could cut you off from your chakra with the slightest of taps? Sasuke growled as he tried to ignore the pain and assumed his taijutsu stance. Meanwhile, Sakura was asking about the Hyuga and was being informed about them by Kakashi, Guy and Rock Lee. Naruto only half paid attention since he kept on feeling a tingle in the back of his mind, warning him of ill intent in the area. His eyes scanned the room, trying to see who would cause him to worry so much before they passed Sasuke, and the feeling grew. His eyes narrowed as the feeling seemed to originate from Sasuke's left shoulder, confusing the Uzumaki greatly. The tingle in his mind pulsed every few seconds right after he felt it pulse from Sasuke's shoulder. What the hell could be causing this feeling? What is Sasuke hiding on his shoulder? Back to the fight, Sasuke was trying to keep his distance after being struck a couple more times by Neji. Twice in his arms and once in his leg when he went for a kick. His hands weaved through hand seals, focusing his chakra from its core to his lungs, before he held his hand to his mouth and released his jutsu. Kaiten. Kikakyu no Jutsu, fire release. Great fireball. From the Uchiha's lips came a fireball wide enough to burn 3 people standing side by side. Neji's eyes narrowed as he didn't have any techniques to counter the flaming sphere. So, he focused chakra into his legs and leaped over the fireball. However, Sasuke saw Neji's intentions with his Sharingan and was already in the air with his fist cocked back. Neji wasn't expecting the Uchiha to be there, but he was able to raise his arms for a weak block against Sasuke's punch. The strike pushed Neji back to the ground, but the Hyuga was able to recover and land on his feet. But Sasuke wasn't done and he launched another jutsu. Kaiten. Hausenkan no Jutsu, Phoenix Age Fire. A cluster of small fireballs shot from the genin's mouth, each forcing Neji to jump out of harm's way. While the fireballs tried to strike Neji, Sasuke pulled out a folded windmill shuriken and unfurled it before he threw it with all of his might. Neji dodged the last fireball just in time to see the large shuriken coming at him. His eyes narrowed and he leaped over the shuriken and smirked as he looked back and saw it stab into the wall behind him. Neji, look out. Higurashi Tenten, his other teammate, called out to him. The Hyuga turned back to Sasuke and instinctively jumped to his side to avoid whatever threat was approaching. A sudden plume of smoke clouded his vision and the next thing he knew was intense force striking him from under his chin and launching him into the air. From the smoke, Sasuke was seen crouched low with his leg in an upward kicking position, much like Neji's taijutsu-using teammate. He then disappeared in a blur and reappeared behind the Hyuga who looked back with a scowl. Typical Uchiha. Unable to fight without using the skills of others, he stated while Sasuke held 2 fingers against his back. While it's true that the first kick was someone else's, from here on it's all original. He then lashed out with a kick, but Neji blocked it with his forearm and smirked. However, Sasuke smirked as well as he used the blocking arm to help him spin in midair and appear above the Hyuga with punch to his chest. He then continued his spin and kicked his face, forcing the Hyuga's body to have his torso become more exposed. But the final spin, Sasuke slammed the heel of his foot against Neji's stomach and into the ground beneath him with a cry of Shishi Renden, lion combo. Neji's mouth was agape with a silent scream of pain as the wind was knocked completely out of his lungs and the force of Sasuke's kick made him cough out blood with the air. Sasuke stumbled back slightly as he tried to fight off the fatigue his body was feeling at the combo he pulled off. Anko saw that Neji wasn't getting up and gestured to Sasuke. The winner is Uchiha Sasuke. Most of the genin of the leaf were speechless at Sasuke's win, especially Team Guy, but the silence was cut as Sakura cried out happily for Sasuke's victory. Ino was quick to follow, while Kakashi just gave another eye smile. Naruto was silent, but he couldn't help but see the fight as interesting and knew that Sasuke worked hard for that win. "Now, for the next match," Anko said as the board shuffled through names again. When it stopped, the Takebetsu Jonin called out, "The second match will be between Abumi Zaku and Akamichi Choji." The medics had just finished taking Niji to the infirmary while fixing up Sasuke on the arena floor as the next two combatants stepped down to the arena floor. Sasuke made his way to his team where his sensei and Sakura congratulated him. His eyes turned to Naruto, who merely gave him a blank look before he looked back down to the arena. The Uchiha really had to push himself for that win, said to Naruto through their mental link. "Yes, he did. Niji wasn't an easy fight, and I have no doubt that Sasuke is still feeling the sting of those earlier strikes. Who do you think you'll end up facing?" "No idea, I just have to wait I suppose," answered the blonde as he saw the match begin and Choji increase his size with the Baika no Jutsu, multi-size technique, making him look like a giant ball with hands, feet, and a small head. Zaku smirked at this and called out, "What do you know?" The fat ass made himself fatter. As he laughed at his own joke, many of the genin cringed as they saw Choji become enraged at being called one of the most hated words of his clan. With a roar, he pulled his limbs and head tight against his body and began to roll forward at incredible speed for something his current size. "Nikuden Sensha, human bullet tank," cried the Akamichi as his rolling form tore up the arena floor. Zaku never lost his smirk as he held out his hands in front of him with his palms facing forward. Some of the shinobi in the balconies were able to see small holes in his palms with tube-like openings filling them. "Let's see you handle this." Zanka, decapitating airwaves. From the openings, highly compressed blasts of air were fired, halting the rolling mass in its tracks. Though it still rolled in place. Zaku's smirk turned positively bloodthirsty as he shifted the output from his tubings. The air being blasted was a mix of air and sound waves, resulting in the blast being formed. However, he was able to change the output at will if he wished. "Alright, take away the air and make it 100% sound." Suddenly, the blast shifted and a horrible screeching sound was heard throughout the arena. Those with sensitive hearing covered their ears at the sound while Akamaru whined in pain. However, Choji was given the full brunt of the screeching and it was amplified by his increased size. The water in his body was acting like an amplifier for the screeching and it rushed to his ears without abandon. The result was the Akamichi forcibly dispelling his technique and falling unconscious with his ears leaking blood. Zaku stopped the technique when he saw this and grinned at his downed opponent. "Guess it's true. The bigger they are, the harder they fall," he commented with a bark of laughter. Anko gave Choji a pitying glance and called out, "The winner is Abumi Zaku." Team 10 looked on sadly as Choji was carried out to the infirmary on a stretcher. Shikamaru's eyes narrowed at Zaku for what he did to his best friend, and the usually lazy genin actually found the desire to do something. And that something was getting back at Zaku for what he did. The next match will be between Kanuta Dosu and Inyazuka Kiba. Anko called out while mentally checking this match off in favor of the Odo genin. It was no secret that the Inyazuka had heightened senses of smell and hearing, and facing a sound user with an increased sense of hearing was a surefire way to lose. She was proven correct when the match proved to be the shortest one yet. All Dosu did was pull out a kunai and drag the blade across his melody arm, making it sound like the scratching of a chalkboard multiplied by 10. Kiba and Akamaru were down before they could even pull off a jutsu. "The winner is Kanuta Dosu," called out the purple-haired proctor. Naruto shook his head in pity at Kiba's match. True, it meant one less competitor, but Kiba at least deserved a chance to fight back. It looks like his family's strength became his biggest weakness. "Geez, what a way to go," commented, and Naruto imagined her shaking her head in pity. "The next match will be between Subaku no Kankuro and Tsurugi Misumi," called out Anko as the two genin made their way down. Unknown location. A certain silver-haired genin walked through the torchlit halls of a hidden bunker as he made his way to his master. He fixed his glasses as he walked with a smirk on his face, making those who passed him avoid his gaze. When he made his way to an open room, he kneeled and bowed his head to his lord. "Everything is going according to plan, Orochimaru-sama." The dark chuckle echoed through the room as snake-like yellow eyes bore down on his most loyal subordinate. "Excellent, I take it Sasuke-kun is advancing to the finals." "Yes, my lord." He was able to prevail against the elder Hyuga genin in the preliminaries. Orochimaru gave a cruel grin at that, but it faltered slightly when he saw the confused look on Kabuto's face. "Something on your mind, Kabuto?" "No, my lord, at least I'm not sure if it's worth mentioning or not." When Orochimaru motioned for him to continue, the silver-haired man said, "I'm mainly curious as to why you allowed Uzumaki to live. I understand that he is needed for Sasuke to advance, but you could have easily fooled the others with a clone in his likeliness." So, you're confused as to why I did not do that and let him live. Kabuto nodded, making Orochimaru smirk. Truly, Kabuto, you have a keen mind, but even the simplest things can escape you at times. My lord. This is a golden opportunity, Kabuto, the snake man declared as he stood and began to pace the floor slowly. An opportunity to see Uzumaki go farther than that of Lady Mito ever did. She was held back by her ties to Konoha and her husband, but Naruto, he chuckled darkly as a gleam appeared in his eyes. Naruto has nothing holding him here. His family is dead, the man he trusts has lied to him for his entire life, and anyone else he cares for won't be an issue unless they try and stop him. He already has an extensive knowledge of the sealing arts, has a tremendous amount of chakra, the Kyuubi to call upon, and lastly his mother's famous chakra chains. His gleaming eyes turned to Kabuto, while his smirk turned into a fanged grin. Imagine if we were able to persuade him to join our cause. Well, I wouldn't be able to possess his body, I could always do so to any child he sires, so long as they do not receive the Kyuubi. Realization dawned on Kabuto. So, you let him live to see if he's worth recruiting. If he's worthy of his clan's name and heritage. Another dark chuckle echoed through the room as Orochimaru sat back down on his throne. Precisely, he practically hissed as the gleam never left his eyes. Central Tower, Arena. The winner is Subaku no Kenkuro. Called out Anko as said genin made his puppet let go of the now dead Misumi. Many of the genin couldn't help but cringe at the brutality of the win, since they had never seen someone have so many of their bones broken in a single moment. The fifth match will be between Hyuga Hinata and Haruno Sakura. Said Kunoichi both made their way down to the arena. While Sakura was confident in her ability to win, Hinata seemed incredibly nervous. Naruto couldn't help but think that Fluttershy put Hinata to shame and confidence. At least the Pegasus was able to talk without a stutter and even willed herself to hug him when they first met. He couldn't help but sigh and shake his head as the fight started, and Hinata appeared to doubt every decision she made, while Sakura attacked with a mixture of basic bunshin, clones, and shuriken. Hinata was able to evade the ninja stars, but she was so worried about which Sakura was the real one that she forgot to activate her bloodline. "Come on, you can't be this weak, can you?" Taunted Sakura, making a few of the genin scowl slightly. Sure, Sakura was named top Kunoichi of their year, but Hinata was from a high-standing clan and could easily push back Sakura. However, they all knew of her incredibly passive and timid nature. Surprisingly, it was a normally quiet genin who spoke up. "Hinata, you can do this. You may see yourself as a weak caterpillar, but you have the makings of a noble butterfly. Now, prove that to us here and now." Every Konoha genin looked to Shino in shock at his words. While he may not have yelled out to her, his words easily broke through the sounds of the fight. Hinata was the most surprised. She knew that Shino was always looking out for her, but she never knew he believed in her so much. Determination filled her eyes as she finally activated her Taijutsu and entered her clan's famous Taijutsu stance. I won't run away. Not anymore, she softly declared as she finally took the offensive and charged Sakura. Her eyes easily saw through the bunshin that Sakura sent at her, and she continued to advance on the Pincat, who was looking more and more worried by the second. Hinata finally got into her guard and hit the girl's stomach with an open palm interlaced with chakra. The result was Sakura being blown back a few feet and sent tumbling. The Pincat tried to stand back up, but the pain was so intense and she had some trouble regaining her breath. Anko saw that Sakura was done and gave the Hyuga a smirk. "Not bad, girlie, not bad at all. The winner is Hyuga Hinata." Yuhi Kurenai, her Jonin sensei, and Shino Bother applauded for Hinata as she made her way back up to the balconies. As they congratulated her, Anko called out the next match. Match 6 will be between Nara Shikamaru and Higurashi Tenten. The lazy genin sighed in annoyance. "Great, I get to fight a girl, troublesome." Tenten took offense to that and called out to him from the floor. "Hey, get your lazy ass down here so that I could kick it all the way into next week." Shika just muttered his clan's famous catchphrase once again as he made his way down. However, while it looked like he was simply complaining to many of the spectators, his mind was working at full force in hopes of coming up with a strategy. It looks like there isn't anything to take cover behind, so weapons won't be hindered. There's an artificial light source, so our shadow output is a constant. However, her skill set is still unknown at the moment, so I have no idea what to expect for now. "Alright, let the 6th match begin." Anko yelled as she moved out of the way. Tenten was the first to attack as she jumped back and pulled out a storage scroll. She unrolled it, having the seal point at Shikamaru, and poured some of her chakra into it. The seal lit up and began to fire volley after volley of various weapons, ranging from typical shuriken and kunai to small sickles and senbon. Shikamaru's eyes narrowed at the attack and he quickly moved around the arena while throwing his own shuriken at the weapons he knew he couldn't dodge. He kept his eyes on Tenten though in case she tried to blindside him. However, the girl just kept on using ranged weapons and nothing else. "Talk about a one-trick pony," he muttered, though many people heard him and a certain Pegasus took offense to it. "Oh, he did not just say that. He had better hope that he doesn't meet me," she growled as his comment got under her skin. "Calm down, Dash, he's just annoyed and used a saying that came to him first. He wasn't insulting you or the others." Dash just huffed in annoyance and stayed quiet as the arena floor was slowly being covered in the many weapons. Shika, now covered in many cuts and having a few senbon stabbed into him, finally decided to take the offensive and threw a flash bomb at Tenten. The resulting flash hit the metallic sheen of the many weapons, increasing the glare of it all, while Shikamaru held his hands in a seal. "Kajime no Jutsu, Shadow Possession," he cried while Tenten was forced to shield her eyes. Due to the increase in light, Shika's shadow was able to quickly attach itself to the weapon users, trapping her in place. He then moved his body to grab a weapon, forcing Tenten's to move the same way, and had her grab one of her own kunai. As he made her hold it to her throat, he said, "Give up, or else I'll have you slit your own throat." Tenten growled in annoyance before she reluctantly called out, "I yield." "The winner is Nara Shikamaru," called out Anko as the lazy genin made his way back up and Tenten picked up her many weapons with Lee and Guy helping her. When the arena floor was clear, Anko declared, "The next match will be between Aburam Shino and Tsuchi-kin." The two genin made their way down and stared at one another as Anko called the match to start. Shino merely stood there and kept his shaded gaze locked onto Kin's, unnerving her slightly. Soon, a growing sound was heard throughout the arena as dark clouds appeared out of Shino's sleeves. When they appeared, the sound was revealed to be the buzzing of many insects, and realization dawned on Kin. "Those bugs are coming from you. Correct, my clan has each of their members act like a living hive where our insects live and feed off of our chakra to grow. In return, they assist us in our endeavors." Kin's eyes narrowed as she pulled out some senbon with small bells on them and threw them at the bug user. Shino was able to easily evade them and noticed the ninja wire on each of them, but he wasn't worried. When Kin pulled the wire and made the bells ring, she expected the bug user to experience vertigo and fogginess of the mind. But Shino stood there unmoving and with no signs of being affected. "Well, your tactic is God for a genin, you looked over a crucial detail. The buzzing of my insects has nullified your bells. As a result, your bell's tones have not reached my ears and they won't so long as my insects keep buzzing. You also never noticed the insects now surrounding you." Gin immediately looked down and saw many insects clinging to her sandals before they crawled onto her legs and began making their way all over her body. She tried to swipe them off, but they just kept coming and relentlessly covered her form. "Surrender or else they will suck your chakra dry," stated the Aburam. Gin glared at him before she hung her head in defeat and nodded, making Anko call out, "The winner is Aburam Shino." As soon as the words were announced, Shino called back his insects and the two genin made their way back up to the balconies. The board shuffled through the names of the remaining 6 genin before it stopped on 2 names that made some of the genin gasp. The 8th match will be between Rock Lee and Subaku no Gara. Gara was quick to appear on the ground in a swirl of sand while Lee flipped over the railing and onto the ground. He assumed a stance where one arm was behind his back and the other was raised in front of him with the palm facing upwards. He stood straight with no bending of the knees, making some of the genin doubt the usefulness of the stance. Lee suddenly swiped his front hand and caught the cork of the gourd that Gara carried on his back. "Don't be so impatient, Gara-san. The match hasn't even begun yet." Naruto stared down at them with his eyes narrowed at Gara. He sensed something from the Redeed genin, but he couldn't figure out what it was. He also felt a tug on his mind and he tried to ignore it. However, as soon as Anko called for the match to start, the strongest tug was felt and his consciousness delved deep into his subconscious. The first thing he noticed was the sound of water dripping down onto a larger source of it. His eyes opened and he saw that he was standing in ankle-deep water in some large hallway. Pipes ran along the ceiling, making it look like he was in the lower levels of a large building or even a sewer. The whisper of his name was heard coming from the direction he was facing, but it felt cold. Malicious even. He couldn't help but want to stay away from it and turn to face the other way. This path felt cold as well, but it wasn't a foreboding type of cold. No, this cold felt natural like a very cool breezy or snow. His eyes narrowed at that and he made to take a step toward the colder path. However, as soon as he raised his foot, he felt his body being pulled towards the more malicious feeling while his foot was being dragged through the water. He felt the pull was strongest around his stomach and looked at it, only to see that a crimson-colored energy was stretching out of it and pulling him along the path. When the pulling finally stopped, he fell to his knees from the momentum shift and heard a deep breathing. He looked up and saw a set of incredibly large steel barred gates with a tag on it that had the kanji for seal written on it. "Wait a minute," he murmured as he stood to his feet and kept his gaze on the seal tag. "This place is..." He was interrupted by a crimson orb with a black slit in the middle of it, appearing out of the darkness behind the gate, followed by a second one. The breathing he heard before grew louder as the eyes seemed to come closer. When they got close to the gates, the furred face of a towering fox was seen, with the body following soon after. The fur was a deep orange, while its ears seemed longer than normal foxes. Its eyes and lips were outlined in pitch black fur, enhancing the gleaming white teeth and blood-colored eyes. Its upper torso looked human in shape with its forepaws having opposable claws that acted like thumbs. To finish it off, the feeling of malice and anger coming off the fox was palpable, and the blonde felt that just breathing it in would affect his thoughts. The seal, the Uzumaki, finally finished. The fox narrowed its eyes at the blonde and lowered its head to get a closer look at him. As soon as the lower part of its jaw was level with the teen's, it spoke. "So, you've come at last, you sure took your time." Its voice was deep and almost whispery, making the blonde unconsciously shiver. "Trust me. I wasn't planning on coming at all, I was forced to come here and talk to you, Kyuubi. I know I was the one who pulled you into your subconscious. It's time we spoke face to face. Why do you think I'd want to talk to you? You killed my parents, you attacked Konoha, and the lives of my mother and ancestor were ruined out of fear of your power." The fox's eyes narrowed at the blonde's words. "You speak as if I personally did all of those things. True, I did kill your parents and attacked your pathetic village, but I didn't ruin their lives. The other villagers did out of their own fear. And besides, what makes you think I just up and decided to attack your village? Better yet, how do you think I was removed from your mother in the first place?" Naruto grit his teeth in frustration at the fox's questions. "How the hell should I know? What if you're just lying to make me trust you?" The Kyuubi roared at him, the wind being pushed against him by its force, and yelled, "I couldn't care less if I have your trust or not, you foolish whelp. I am merely telling you that things are not as they may seem." The fox then calmed itself and continued, "Your mother and Mito wouldn't have removed me on their own, unless they had no other option. Mito was the only one who did when she transferred my power to you. As for Kushina, my freedom from her was more forceful." Blue eyes narrowed at that. "What do you mean by more forceful?" "Another time, perhaps when you're away from outside distractions like your teacher trying to get your attention." "What are you?" His question was interrupted as he was forced back into the focus of the real world and saw that Lee was being pulled out on a stretch while his left leg and arm looked crushed and covered in blood. Gaara looked banged up as well, but it wasn't nearly as bad as Lee. "What the hell did I miss?" thought the blonde in shock. "You weren't paying attention." "No, my mind was elsewhere at the moment." Well, Lee wasn't able to use ninjutsu or genjutsu since his chakra network is apparently too messed up to fix. So, he focused on taijutsu and was actually pushing Gaara back. He even landed a clean punch on the guy. But then Gaara was revealed to have not only an automatic defense of shifting sand, but a skin-level layer of sand armor that absorbed many of Lee's attacks. So, how did Lee do all of that damage to Gaara? He opened something called the Celestial Gates. I didn't get the details, but I saw that it increased his physical ability way above the peak level, and his skin even turned red. He then moved so fast that I was barely able to see them clearly and went for a finishing blow. But it ended up not being enough to win, and Lee was open for a counterattack that crushed his leg and arm, finished the blonde. "Yay. Naruto, are you there?" asked Kakashi as he waved his hand in front of the blonde's face. When Naruto grabbed it to make him stop, Kakashi said, "I've been trying to get your attention for about 3 minutes. You're up next." The Uzumaki looked down to the arena floor and saw that his opponent was the blonde Kunoichi from the Suna team. She had a look of impatience on her face, and he quickly jumped over the railing down to the floor. Anko smirked at him and asked, "Was the last match really that amazing that you were left speechless, Gaki?" Naruto just gave her a slightly annoyed look, but she took it in stride and just grinned at him. "Can we just start the match now, Anko-san?" "Yay, keep your pants on, Blondie. The 7th match will now begin." As soon as she jumped away from them, the two blondes moved away from one another and Naruto pulled out a kunai and seal tag while Tamari removed the large item from her back. She opened it slightly, revealing that it was a very large fan, and swung it at him. The effect of the swing was an instant release of a galling wind that forced the Uzumaki to brace himself to stay up. As he braced himself, he wrapped the seal around his kunai and activated it, making chakra surround it and stretched past the knife blade to the length of an ninjato. He took a few practice swings with it before he held it in a reverse grip and stood with his knees bent and his blade behind his back in his right hand. In his left was another seal tag, which made Tamari narrow her eyes. "So, he specializes in Fuinjutsu. This could be a problem since I have no idea what these seals will do unless he activates them." She decided to force the Konoha blonde to stay a good distance with her fan pushing him back whenever he got close. So, she just had to wait for him to make a move. Naruto pumped chakra into his legs and rushed at Tamari in hopes of reaching her before she swung her fan. The two stood a distance of 45 feet away from each other and his speed easily covered 25 feet before she made to swing at him. His eyes narrowed as he dropped the seal tag in his hand and jumped to the side to avoid the blast of wind. He was crouched on one knee after his dodge, while he saw the seal tag he dropped light up faintly. He then thought over his opponent's attack as she stood and waited for him to move. It looks like her fan only pushes the wind in one direction. I can use that to my advantage. With the plan slowly forming in his mind, he held his hands in a cross seal and summoned forth 20 clones while he used the smoke created by their appearance to quickly make a new seal tag. As the clones rushed at the Suna blonde, he had finished the tag and placed it on one of his rushing clones. Damari opened her fan up to its second star and swung at the clones, sending forth a gale of wind that had small wind blades mixed in with it. The clones hit by the blades of wind were instantly dispelled, while the others used chakra to stick their feet to the ground and kept advancing. The Suna Kunoichi's eyes narrowed as she jumped back and swung her fan downward, sending wind crashing downward on the clones, while she rode on top of her fan and glided over them toward the one she assumed was the original. Naruto's clones were forced down by the downward wind, but one was able to reach the seal tag that the original had dropped around the beginning of the match. He stuck the seal to his palm and pointed the writing at Tamari with the kanji giving a bright green glow. "Tamari, behind you," called out Kankuro, making said Kunoichi turn to look behind her just in time to see her own technique being fired at her from a seal tag. She maneuvered herself in midair to have the flat side of her open fan take the brunt of the attack, but this forced her to leave her form exposed on the other side. As a result, the clone that the original placed a seal on before jumped toward her, while the original held up a half-ram seal. Fuinjutsu. Bakahatsu Fuian, Sealing Art. Explosion Seal. The seal tag shined a fierce red before it exploded and pushed Tamari back with its force. She tumbled a little while her fan flew out of her hands. As she struggled to stand, Naruto had a chain poke out of his right wrist before he moved at full chakra-enhanced speed and began to circle the Kunoichi, unknowingly doing the same thing Lee did to Gaara in their fight. She was finally able to stand back to her feet and braced herself for any attack on her person, but Naruto wasn't known as unpredictable for no reason. As soon as he saw she was up, he had the chain stab itself into the ground and uncoil as he moved around Tamari repeatedly. With each run around her, the chain fell around her in a circle, but she was more focused on waiting for him to strike her. Because of this, she was unprepared for Naruto to suddenly have the chain stop uncoiling, which forced it to pull tight against her form and hold her in place. He pulled his arm back forcefully, making the chain squeeze her slightly and causing her to groan in pain. "Give up," he ordered as he held up another seal tag. "This seal is meant to send an electrical current into whatever it's touching, and I'm sure you realize how conductive this chain is." Tamari glared fiercely at him as he repeated, "Give up, unless you prefer that I shock you into unconsciousness." The Suna Kunoichi kept glaring at him and he slowly moved the seal tag next to the chain before she relented. "Alright, you win. I give up." Anko grinned at the Uzumaki for his unique way of fighting as she called out, "The winner is Uzumaki Naruto." Naruto nodded and flexed his wrist, making the chain quickly coil back into his arm. The fact that the chain went inside of his arm shocked many of the shinobi present, especially Kakashi and Sarutobi, but Naruto ignored their looks in favor of returning to the stands. He paid no attention to the last fight between Yamanaka Ino and Akado Yoroi and mentally conversed with his Pegasus friend. "So, how did I do?" "Not bad at all, Blondie. I'm impressed with how quick you can think up plans on the fly. That could save your life one day." "Thanks, but I need more training. I can't always rely on my seals, clones, and chains. I need more variety in my skills. We'll go back to Ponyville after these preliminaries are over. Maybe Celestia or Luna could come up with something." "Yeah, maybe. The winner is Yamanaka Ino, due to Yoroi forfeiting the fight." Naruto refocused on the now finished fight and saw Yoroi make a seal, while a seemingly unresponsive Ino suddenly perked up and cried out in victory. She must have used her clan's mind-related jutsu to win. Not a bad strategy, but it won't always work for her. The genin who won were then called down to pick a number, which would then tell them where they stood in the finals of the Chunin exams. The resulting numbers and fights ended up being Abiram Shino, number 1, versus Abumi Zaku, number 2. Yamanaka Ino, number 3, versus Subaku no Kankuro, number 4. Nara Shikamaru, number 5, versus Uchiha Sasuke, number 6. Tenuta Dosu, number 7, versus Hyuga Hinata, number 8. Subaku no Gaara, number 9, versus Uzumaki Naruto, number 10. Many of the genin looked to Naruto in slight worry when they saw who his opponent was, but the blonde merely turned to his redeeted future opponent and the two narrowed their eyes at one another. "No question about it. I need more training if I'm going to face him," thought Naruto as the genin were excused from the central tower and escorted out of the Forest of Death. After a month of last-minute training, they would meet back at Konoha Stadium for the Chunin exam finals. Chapter 5. A month to prepare. Naruto sighed as he sat atop the head of the Yondaime Hokage of the Hokage Mountain. So much had been revealed to him throughout the first two parts of this exam, and it was making his head spin. His father, the Yondaime Hokage and Kairoi Senko of Konoha, was the one who placed the Kyuubi inside of him. It hurt to accept that. It really did. From what he had witnessed, fathers put their family before everything. However, his father didn't. His father put the village before family, and it angered him to the core. He was in Uzumaki by his mother, and he took the creed to heart. His father, while not in Uzumaki, broke that creed in his eyes, and he felt betrayed. His fists clenched to stave off the building rage towards the Yondaime and Konoha. Beside him, Dash gazed at her blonde friend sadly. He was constantly betrayed and let down by those who he should have been able to trust. She desperately wanted to help him, but she didn't know how. In her eyes, his anger was justified and couldn't be swayed. Still, she decided to do something for him and engulfed her from in a swirl of color. This brought Naruto out of his thoughts, and he looked on curiously, wondering what she was doing. When the swirling colors faded, he was left agape at what he was seeing. Ash had transformed herself into a human with slightly pale blue skin and rainbow color hair that draped over her left shoulder and frizzed at the ends. She was dressed in a black shirt with her cutie mark portrayed on the front, dark blue cargo pants, and black kunoichi sandals. Around her neck was a pendant of a bright blue Pegasus, and her right middle finger had a ring with a Uzumaki swirl on it. Dash. Naruto stammered out in total shock. The transformed pony smirked at him and leaned on her left leg while her arms crossed underneath her impressive bust. If Naruto were the perverted type, he would have noticed that they were high C-cup. "Well, Blondie, what do you think?" asked Dash as her smirk turned to a grin. I thought why did he stumbled over his words as his mind tried to process everything. If he was honest with himself, Dash looked incredibly beautiful, and it took a lot of his willpower to hold down the blush that tried to show. She laughed at his inability to form a sentence before she engulfed him in a comforting embrace. While she held him close in hopes of helping him calm down, the blush Naruto tried so desperately to hold down burned furiously on his face. "Don't worry, no matter what happens, you still have me and the others to help you. We'll stand by you to the end, Naruto-kun," she reassured him, unaware of the added suffix she placed on his name. Slowly, Naruto's arms rose up and wrapped around her back and hugged her. "Thank you," he murmured gratefully. The two stayed like that for some time, unaware that they were being watched by the Sandaime and his old student, Jiraiya the Gama-senin. Jiraiya was in truth the godfather of the blonde, but he was unable to be there for Naruto due to his duties as spymaster of Konoha. That didn't mean that Jiraiya had no wish to see the Uzumaki. Jiraiya was hoping to take the kid as his apprentice of the Gama arts, but it looked like he already had a summoned clan that took an interest in him. In more ways than one for the one currently hugging the teen. "So, what do you think of him, Jiraiya?" asked Hiruzen as he deactivated his crystal ball. Jiraiya leaned against one of the office walls with his eyes closed and arms crossed. "Honestly, I think he looks so much like his father that it's scary. Speaking of which, does he know who his father is?" The Sandaime sighed tiredly at the question. "To be honest with you, I'm not sure. Apparently he and his team had a run-in with Orochimaru in the Forest of Death. I noticed that he seemed very different when he and his team made it to the tower. Although, I think that may be due to the fact that he assumed his team would stay and help him instead of leave him to cover their escape. Naruto also gained the ability his mother was famous for and displayed it during the preliminaries." Jiraiya raised a brow with a smirk. "Did he now? Well, color me impressed with the kid. And apparently he's skilled with Fuinjutsu if what you told me about his match with that Suna girl is anything to go by." The Sandaime nodded and replied, "Yes, he is. In fact, he told me that he found the old Uzumaki shrine and spent many hours a day inside reading Mito-sama's journal and the various Fuinjutsu scrolls. Apparently, he found it about 2 years ago and is already skilled enough to be labeled an adept in the arts." "You're kidding?" Jiraiya exclaimed in surprise. "An adept in only 2 years. It took me almost 10 years to get that far. The boy's a natural in the art. Even more so than his mother and nearly as good as Mito-sama. Although, I wouldn't be surprised if he surpassed her in a few years." Jiraiya shook his head with a chuckle. "Man, to think he's that fluent in the art, it's honestly scary. Who knows what kinds of seals he'll create in the future." "Who indeed?" Saratobi asked with a prideful smile as he thought of the young Uzumaki. Next day, Konoha Hospital. Naruto sat inside the reception area as he waited for Kakashi to finish checking on Sakura. Apparently, Hinata's strike to her was much more than the Pinket was used to, and it was taking a while to heal. Sasuke sat to his right and Naruto was able to finally get a glimpse at the strange marking on his neck. In the blonde's hand was a small notebook and he was drawing a copy of the mark on it as well as the obvious oppressor that surrounded it. Ash, still in her transformed state, sat on his left with a look of boredom on her face. She hated hospitals since they held no excitement for her. Sure, they were helpful, but she preferred areas with more excitement and thrills. After another 5 minutes, Naruto finished drawing the mark and Kakashi was seen heading their way. He gave them a lazy wave and took note of the girl sitting close to his blonde student. He even noticed that she subtly scooted closer to him protectively. Curious, he thought before he gave them an eye smile. "Alright boys, let's get started on your training." Both of them nodded and began to follow him, while Dash walked next to Naruto, much to the suspicion of Sasuke and curiosity of Kakashi. "Who's the girl, dope?" Dash gave a small scowl at the title towards her friend, while the blonde replied, "She's a friend who I've known for a little while now. She's curious about Shinobi after I told her about what we've gone through." "HMPH," grunted the Uchiha. "If she's so curious, then she should have asked someone with more experience like me." "Oh sure," began Dash in an exaggerated tone. "I'd love to hear more about ditching your teammate and leaving him to fight a white snake in a deadly forest." Sasuke scowled at her while Kakashi's eye narrowed slightly at her words. "Just how much did Naruto tell you, miss?" "Dash," replied the transformed pony. "My name is Dash and Naruto-kun told me all about his career so far. He told me about his acceptance as a genin, his mission to Nami no Kuni, and the first 2 parts of the Chunin exams." Kakashi then turned to Naruto. "Does she know about your personal experiences as well, Naruto?" The blonde nodded with a serious face. "Yes, her friends and their bosses know and they can be trusted. They were friends of my mother's side of my family." Kakashi's lone eye widened in surprise, while Sasuke just walked on with a disinterested face. He looked at Dash and she just grinned at him. "I see, well, I'm glad you found some people to bond with, Naruto. Yeah, which reminds me. They promised to help me with a month training, Kakashi-sensei." "How can they help you when they don't know of the shinobi arts, dope?" questioned the Uchiha. "Just because we don't know your flashy jutsu doesn't mean we can't help in other aspects," Dash defended, poking Sasuke in his chest. "Is that so?" asked Kakashi before things could escalate. "Well then, I suppose there isn't any harm in letting them help you, Naruto. But, I want to figure something out before you go. Just so I could still train you some other time." He then pulled out 2 sheets of blank paper and made a clone that led Sasuke away. The clone took one of the sheets and left with the Uchiha, while the original gave Naruto the other one. "What's this?" asked the Uzumaki. Kakashi I smiled and answered, "This is called chakra paper. It allows you to see what affinities you have in terms of chakra nature." "So how does it work?" The Jonin gestured to the paper and replied, "Just pour some of your chakra into it. The paper will handle the rest." The Uzumaki complied and let some of his chakra into the paper. The result left the 3 surprised. "No way," Dash whispered. But how?" stammered the sensei. The blonde meanwhile gained misty eyes as he looked down at the paper. The only thing he muttered was, "Haku." Konoha Hot Springs, 1 hour later. The whiskered blonde sighed as he relaxed in the soothing waters of the hot springs. Dash told him to get some rest while she left to prepare for his arrival at Ponyville. He decided to take a dip to rest his weary limbs since he hadn't been to the springs in a few weeks and the exams took quite a bit out of him so far. He was brought out of his relaxation by the sound of a man giggling like a little schoolgirl. He turned and frowned at the sight of a white-haired man sitting atop a large toad and peeping through the wall that separated the men's side from the women's. "Grade A perverted peeping Tom," muttered the Jinchuriki distastefully before he got out and dressed himself. Once he was fully clothed, he approached the man from behind and stuck a seal tag on him under the guise of patting his back. "You know, you must be pretty low to deliberately peep on women in your refined age, old man." The man scoffed and waved a dismissive hand. "Ah, go away kid. I don't have time to be lectured by someone less than half my age." Naruto grinned and began to walk away. "Whatever you say, old timer." He then held his hand up in a half-ram seal while yelling out, "Hey ladies. You might wanna look out for perverted old men." The seal on the man's shoulder lit up and he suddenly felt his chakra flow become erratic while the separating wall was kicked down by a towel-clad Anko with half a dozen Kunoichi behind her. Jiraiya tried to leave with a chakra-enhanced leap, but his chakra didn't flow right and he just stumbled and fell at her feet. He paled at her grin. Well, looks like my birthday came early this year. And I couldn't have asked for a better present. A perv to beat down." She then looked to the retreating blonde and called out, "Thanks, Gaki-kun." Naruto waved without looking back and grinned devilishly as he heard the man's cries for mercy. He laughed out loud as he was engulfed in a sudden plume of smoke and left the area. Ponyville. Within the princess's chambers, Naruto arrived in a plume of smoke still laughing at his actions against Jiraiya. "And what happens to be so amusing, young Naruto?" Celestia asked with a kind smile. Still snickering, he told her and Luna about his prank and the 2 mares chuckled at his antics. "Quite devious, Naruto-san," Luna commented. "Nah, Luna-heim, you don't have to be so formal. We're family, right?" asked the blonde, surprising the 2 alicorns. They looked to one another before smiles appeared and they nodded to him. Yes, I suppose we are, Naruto, stated the darker alicorn. Celestia was pleased to hear how sincere Naruto was when he asked if they were family. It reminded her so much of Mito when she asked the very same question. She also could have sworn that she saw a ghostly visage of Mito placing a hand on Naruto's shoulder with a smile full of pride. Well, let's start your training, declared the white alicorn before she and her sister led their summoner to the castle courtyard where the other mares waited for them. The Uzumaki smiled to them all and they returned it. Celestia watched and smiled as Naruto approached them and began to talk with them before he turned his attention to Pinky, and the two began laughing after a bit. The princess guessed that Naruto told the pink mare about his prank and wanted to see what Pinky thought of it. Luna smiled as well, proud that her summoner was so close to them. She was sure that Naruto would be like the second coming of Mito. Friendly, caring, and a true Uzumaki to the core. She then cleared her throat and got the attention of the blonde and the mares. Now then, let's begin your month of training, Naruto. We plan to help you with your chakra control, your affinity training, and finally your beginning steps to learning magic. Magic? Queried Naruto. It was Twilight who answered. That's right. You see, as our summoner you slowly begin forming a connection with magical energy, or mana. It's like chakra, but it's also very different. What do you mean? She means, darling, that it's within you like chakra, but it comes out in a different manner, explained Rarity with a smile. Mana requires a chant spoken in what many believe is the ancient tongue, 1. For example, a spell to call forth the gift of flight is like so. Exultavi, da mihi gradium per nubila portab inventiat. To the amazement of the blonde, the white unicorn was surrounded in a bright yellow-green aura that slowly allowed her to levitate off the ground. With a rush of wind, she shot up into the air and circled the courtyard a couple of times before she landed back down and released the aura. That is an advanced spell, Twilight explained. You won't learn that for a while. Naruto couldn't help but pout at that, making the others chuckle. So, what spell will I learn first? A minor healing spell, Celestia answered. Your clan was known for their inability to use them due to their higher than average chakra levels. The spell will rectify that. Naruto grinned and nodded. Alright, then let's get started. Not so fast there, partner, Applejack interrupted before he could get too excited. Firstly, we need to get your control up more. That's why we had the statue from the fountain moved so that you could use it to learn water walking, Luna explained. However, there is one thing we wish to test. Naruto, create a clone and have it follow me please, Celestia asked, and the blonde complied. After a couple of minutes, he stiffened slightly and called out, you never even gave me a chance to answer. The white alicorn walked back to them with a smile on her face. And how would you know that, Naruto? Because you just asked me, he said before it came to him. I just remembered what my clone experienced. Correct, Luna said with a smirk. It seems as though your clones are able to transmit their experiences to you. Now, what do you think this could mean for your training? I could seriously lower the amount of time needed to train, answered the Uzumaki. That's right. So, make around 20 clones and have them practice water walking, while another 20 will master tree walking. Have them dispel one at a time every 5 minutes so that the other clones could get an idea of how to perform better, Celestia stated. Naruto nodded and created the clones, while Fluttershy and Dash stepped up to him. We'll be helping you with your affinities, Naruto-kun, explained the blue Pegasus while the yellow one nodded with a smile. So, create 10 clones, and we each will take 5 to work with. The Uzumaki complied and was then approached by AJ and Pinky. Alright partner, the princesses are sure that, while clones transfer experience, they don't pass on physical improvement. So, Pinky and I will be helping you in that aspect. And how will you do that? Questioned the Jinchuriki. Pinky grinned, making him grow worried before she pulled out a strange black orb from somewhere. Simple. We'll be working on your reaction and evasion skills. Now dodge. Dodge. Yelled the blonde before he saw Pinky light up the small bit of fuse sticking out of the orb and he paled. Oh shit. He yelled before he jumped out of the way of the now identified bomb. As he ran away, Pinky was suddenly seen with a saddle full of unlit bombs and she chased after him with a giggle. AJ sighed at her friend's idea of training and wondered what kind of crazy person would see it as useful. Back in Konoha, a certain Takebetsu Jonin suddenly sneezed and grinned. I can't help but think someone is using my old training methods, she then did a fist pump and yelled out, show them what for, whoever you are. 2 weeks later, strength training. Naruto stood in front of one of the many apple trees of the apple orchards. AJ stood beside him with an empty basket on the ground next to her. Okay Naruto, let's see just how hard you can kick. We ponies can't use hands unless we transform, so we rely on our hooves and heads for physical attacks. Yay, I was wondering about that. Dash showed me her transformation before I came back here and I was wondering if you all could do it. Of course we can, partner. Shoot, we use chakra so we can sure as sugar use jutsu. The Uzumaki nodded before a thought came to him. In that case, could you all come to Konoha to watch me in the finals? I'd feel a lot better if I had people cheering me on. AJ smiled and placed a hoof on his shoulder reassuringly. Of course we will. We wouldn't miss it for anything. Thanks, said the Jinchuriki gratefully before he suddenly rushed the tree in front of him and lashed out with a spin kick. When his foot struck the tree, about 5 apples fell, but it still looked pretty full. Not bad, but it could definitely be better. At least your body is moving more fluidly thanks to Pinky's methods. Naruto shuddered at the memory. First it was bombs he dodged, then the pink mare moved to what she called party cannons that fired flame-covered cannonballs, and then she covered him in honey and pissed off a full beehive before she had him try to outrun them all. He was never more thankful for his healing factor than after getting stung all over. But still, the results were more than expected. He was faster than ever, had incredible increases in flexibility, and his reaction timing improved substantially. Alright, we'll increase your leg strength by having you bench press large rocks with your legs only. We'll start with a 50-pound rock and work our way up by intervals of 10 pounds. He nodded while she left to fetch the first large rock. With a sigh, he lowered himself down and leaned back against a tree with his arms behind his back. Man, this place is so peaceful. His eyes closed in relaxation while a small filly peered out from behind a tree. She had a yellow coat, bushy red hair with curled ends, amber eyes, and a large pink bow on top. This was Applebloom, the younger sister of Applejack and one of the Cutie Mark Crusaders, a trio of fillies in search of their cutie marks. She had heard of the ponies gaining a summoner and was curious as to what he looked like. Now that she got a good look at him, she couldn't help but wonder if she and her friends would be able to join the contract and help him out. "What are you doing, darlin'?" asked AJ from behind her, making her jump in surprise. AJ then looked to where her younger sister was gazing and smiled. "You know, if you're so curious about him, why don't you just introduce yourself? I'm sure he'd love to meet you and your friends." "Why you think?" asked the filly. "Of course. Now, go get your friends while I help Naruto with his training." Applebloom nodded with a smile before she ran off, leaving a smiling Applejack to head over to her summoner. They got to work on his training for around a half an hour before Applebloom came back with her 2 friends. The first was a Pegasus filly with an orange coat, frizzed purple hair, and purple eyes. The second was a unicorn filly with a white coat, smooth pink and purple streaked hair with curled ends, and pale green eyes. They were Scootaloo, a filly hoping to be as well known as Rainbow Dash, and Sweetie Belle, the younger sister of Rarity. "Hey there girls." Applejack called out with a smile while Naruto paused in his leg push-ups to see them. With a smile he waved to them before he went back to his training. Applebloom looked to her sister, who nodded reassuringly before she and her friends walked up to the blonde. "Hi, my name's Applebloom. I'm AJ's little sister." "I'm Scootaloo," introduced the young Pegasus. "And I'm Sweetie Belle," finished the unicorn filly. "Nice to meet you 3, returned the Uzumaki as he kept training. "I'm Uzumaki Naruto of Konoha." "You're really an Uzumaki?" Scootaloo asked excitedly. "Yep, my mother was one so that makes me one too," he answered before he shoved the rock high up into the air with his legs and pushed off of the ground with his hands. In midair, he intercepted the falling rock and lashed out with rising kick that was enhanced with chakra and burst the rock into dozens of small pebbles. The fillies were left awestruck at the kick while AJ nodded approvingly. Good, now his kicks will definitely make heads roll. 2 days later, magic training. Seated in a cross-legged position, Naruto waited eagerly for Twilight and Rarity to begin his training in mana. "So, how do we start this training?" "First, you need to relax and meditate," instructed the stylish unicorn. "Mana can only be called upon when you're calm and collected." "Right," he said with a nod before he laced his fingers and had his hands rest in his lap with the palms up. His eyes closed and his breathing slowly calmed as he brought himself into a meditative position. "Good," praised the student of Celestia. "Keep at it and you'll soon feel a pull towards your mind center. Let the pull take you there." He didn't respond to them and focused on reaching his mindscape. Slowly, he felt a tug on his mental awareness and let the pull take him. His eyes opened to the hallway he saw the first time he arrived, except there was a third path now. Well, the first felt of winter and the second felt malicious, this one felt strange. If he had to describe it, it felt ghostly yet at the same time full of life. It was definitely new to him and he headed down that path. As he walked down the path, he noticed the walls gained archaic runes and the water changed to a yellow-green that shone brightly. He soon entered a room that had a small pedestal with claw-shaped corners. Each of the claw tips was touching an orb of swirling energies that shone as various colors. He raised a brow as he felt the orb pulse every few seconds and send the water on the ground outward in small waves. Slowly, he approached the pedestal, raised a hand to it. When his palm got close, the claws opened up and unblocked the orb, allowing the Uzumaki to grasp it. As soon as he did, he felt a rush of power enter his body. The pipes that rested on the ceilings of the hallways gained a third one. The first was a bright blue that represented his chakra. The second was a bloody crimson that represented the Kyuubi's chakra. And finally, the third pipe was a yellow-green to represent his newfound mana. His mind then forced his consciousness back to his body, and he opened his eyes to the smiling faces of Twilight and Rarity. "Congratulations, darling," praised the White Mare. "Now, we can begin training you to harness your mana," stated the Violet One. "We'll begin with a healing spell." 1 week later, 5 days to finals. Naruto stood alone in the courtyard in the dead of night for personal training. He had learned much from the ponies, but this was something that he had to learn on his own. He was starting to wonder if Kami had a thing for irony. He was gifted with the power of the first person he saw as a friend and lost. The girl who showed him what to truly fight for. Her mentality was easily that of an Uzumaki due to her drive to put the man she saw as precious to her above all else. She even sacrificed herself for him, and it was heart-wrenching to see the man seemingly take it all with apathy. It wasn't until Naruto's words got to him that the blonde saw true regret and sorrow in the so-called demon's eyes. This man finally let down his facade of disinterest for his comrades, but it was just in time for him to die in hopes of avenging her. 2 people were lost that day. 2 people who didn't deserve the life they had lived or the deaths they received. The blonde held out a hand and focused his chakra to his palm. His eyes were closed in concentration as he attempted to perform what the girl had performed many times against him and Sasuke. The air around him slowly grew colder and swirled into his right palm before it took the shape of a senbon needle made entirely of ice. He smiled sadly at the sight of it. It was flawed. Horribly so. But it was a start to the preservation of her memory. "I promise to keep your spirit with me when I use this power, Haku-chan," he whispered as he attempted to make another senbon. Unknown to him, 6 mares watched on sadly as he trained himself ragged to learn the power of his dead friend. They all resolved to be there for him, as friends, family, and possibly something more. Chapter 6. To prove oneself. The roar of the crowd. The gleam in the eyes of betting officials. The pride in the eyes of the many teachers and mentors. These were just a few things that the remaining genin saw as they stepped into the arena floor for the final part of their exams. Although, 2 genin were missing, and it was immediately noticed by the Konoha genin. After all, the missing genin were Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto. Hiruzen noticed this as well, but he wasn't as worried since their matches were the 3rd and 5th ones. They had time to arrive and participate in their matches. For now, he was seated in the cage booth with the Kazekage. Both cage had 2 guards, and it went unnoticed that the Kazekage's eyes narrowed when they passed over Jiraiya of the Sannin, seated on one of the awnings over the spectator seats. The elder Cage stood up and addressed the people, "Welcome to the finals of the Chunin selection exams." A roar of the crowd interrupted him before he continued, "We hope that the matches pique your interests and that the visiting officials and tourists see just what these young genin are capable of." He sat back down as the proctor, a man named Shiranui Genma, started the first match between Aburame Shino and Abumi Zaku. Random rooftop of Konoha. Seated on the roof's edge and observing the match between the genin of Konoha and Odo were Hada Kakashi and his student Sasuke. The Uchiha had overcome a wardrobe change during the month, which consisted of an all-black outfit with arm belts all over his left arm. His sandals changed to black as well, while his hair was grown out slightly. "Pay attention, Sasuke," Kakashi advised while he kept his gaze on his orange book. "It's always best to keep an eye on your potential competition." Sasuke merely grunted in response before a thought came to mind. Any sign of the dope? This earned the Uchiha a sigh from the Jonin. "Sasuke, you should really be more appreciative of your teammates and not berate them. After all, Naruto has done quite a lot for you and Sakura, yet you both just belittle him and bring him down," admonished the man. "Of course, you two also left him for dead in the forest and never bothered to ask if he was alright." The Uchiha didn't respond and just turned his gaze towards the match, just in time to see Shino's bugs plugging Zaku's airwave holes. The Odo genin was foolish enough to fire them while plugged and suffered for it by having his arms blown off from the elbows down. "Pathetic," murmured the genin as the medic took away the severely crippled Odo nin. Stands of the stadium. In the top row of the stand sat 6 women who were unique in their own way. The first had slightly pale blue skin and rainbow-colored hair that draped over her left shoulder and frizzed at the ends. She was dressed in a black shirt that had a cloud shooting a rainbow-colored lightning bolt portrayed on the front, dark blue cargo pants, and black Kanoichi sandals. Around her neck was a pendant of a bright blue Pegasus, and her right middle finger had a ring with a yuzu swirl on it. The second had tan skin and had her long blonde hair tied in a low ponytail, while a western hat, with 3 apples styled on it, rested atop her head. She was dressed in a red and white plaid shirt that had the sleeves rolled up to her elbows, a pair of dark blue jeans, and some brown boots. Around her neck was a necklace with an orange horse on it, and she also sported an yuzu swirl ring. The third had slightly pale skin and blue eyeliner on her face. Her purple and blue hair was styled beautifully straight with curled ends and framed her face magnificently. She was dressed in a white dress what reached her knees and sandals that matched the blue streaks in her hair. Over the heart of the dress were 3 crystal-like markings, while a white unicorn pendant hung around her neck. Her yuzu ring was the only thing that stood out from the color scheme, but she didn't seem to care at all. The fourth woman had a slight purple tint to her skin that made people who noticed her think she was from an exotic country. Her dark blue hair flowed straight down her back, while the purple and red streaks added to her charm. She was dressed in a dark purple shirt and black cargo pants, while she wore dark blue sandals on her feet. A purple unicorn pendant hung around her neck while her fingers sported 2 rings. One being the yuzu swirl and the other in the design of a bursting red sparkle. The fifth had a light yellow tint to her skin, while her pink hair flowed down to her mid-back and curved out at the ends. She wore a green shirt with a design of 3 blue butterflies with pink wings on the front, just under her yellow Pegasus pendant. She wore a light yellow skirt that fell past her knees and green sandals, while her yuzu ring was hidden underneath her demurely clasped hands. She had this incredibly shy aura to her that many passerby spectators saw as adorable. The last one had skin with the faintest undertone of pink that many people failed to see. Her dark pink seemed to poof out all the way down to her lower back. She wore a pink shirt with the sleeves and collar lined in black that had 3 balloons styled over her heart. Her shorts gray and stopped right at her knees while her feet were covered in black sandals. Her attire was finished by her pink horse pendant and yuzu ring. "Think he'll choose to make a grand entrance?" asked the one in the white sundress. The one with rainbow hair smirked. "Nah, he won't do that. He wants people to see him as respectable since he wants to bring back the Uzumaki name." The shy one gave a small smile at her friend's words. "He's come so far from when we first met him, hasn't he?" "That he has," the one in the western hat agreed. "To think that he's gained so much experience and prowess is nothing short of impressive. Not to mention his studies with Mana. He's learning at an extensive rate that I wouldn't be surprised if he caught up with me in about a year," added the one with the sparkle ring. The last one just smiled and kept quiet, surprising her friends since she was the more excitable of them. Her blue eyes looked down to the arena and mentally wished that the other matches would hurry so that they could watch the Uzumaki perform. The match between Yamanaka Ino and Sabaku no Kankuro had just ended in favor of the Tsunagenin. Ino, while having trained much more intensely than she had ever done before, was just unable to tell the difference between the puppet and the main body. It turns out that Kankuro had pulled the trick he used against Miss Yumi once again, and she was unprepared for the poison that had been injected into her via Senbon. While she was decent with poison, it was only with Konoha's poison and not Suna's. "Now then, the third match will be between Uchiha Sasuke and Nara Shikamaru," called out Genma, and many of the Konoha civilians cheered for Sasuke. Shika merely sighed and was just about to forfeit before his gaze locked with his mother's in the stands. She was smiling at him, but he and his father knew that the smile she gave was anything but sweet. It was one of those smiles that screamed, "Do it or face my anger." "Troublesome," he muttered before he made his way down just in time to see his opponent appear in an overly dramatic swirl of leaves and wind. "TCH show off." Sasuke gave Shika a once-over before he scoffed and stood with his arms crossed. "I forgot that you were my opponent. I can't believe I trained so much just to have a lazy idiot as my first opponent." Shika just yawned off the insult since he had truthfully been called worse. Besides, he didn't give a damn about Sasuke's opinions of him. Opinions meant nothing in the long run. Only actions and outcomes. Of course, this route meant that he'd have to actually put some effort, and he sighed in annoyance at that. "Alright then," Genma stated before he brought his raised arm down. "Begin." Once he jumped away from the genin, Sasuke took the initiative and launched a volley of shuriken at the lazy genius. Shika's normally bored eyes lit up in analytic observation, and he skillfully jumped back while blocking all of the shuriken with thrown kunai. As soon as he landed, he placed his hands in a modified rat seal and used his Kajime no Jutsu, shadow possession. His shadow warped before it stretched out across the ground in hopes of catching the Uchihas. Sasuke scoffed in annoyance before he jumped high into the air and launched his Housenkan no Jutsu, Phoenix Age Fire, making the Nara cancel his jutsu in favor of avoiding the many fireballs. He secretly pulled out a couple of smoke bombs and set them off just as the fireballs landed, making the affected area get consumed in a black haze. The Uchiha narrowed his eyes at the smoke cloud while taking random glances at the ground in case the Nara tried anything with his shadow. The smoke slowly cleared and Shika was nowhere to be seen. Sasuke scowled in confusion before he instinctively activated his Sharingan to search for his opponent's chakra signature. His red eyes turned to one of the few trees in the arena and he flew through hand seals before he launched a Gakakyu no Jutsu, Fireball, into its branches. Shika was quick to jump out of the way just as the branches were set aflame and he launched a lone kunai at the Uchiha. Sasuke was easily able to dodge thanks to his Dojutsu, but a gleam caught his eyes. One that came from ninja wire. Shit. He mentally cursed and made to jump away before he felt his body freeze. Shika landed and the spectators saw his shadow moving as if it were that of a flame towards the Uchiha. Hajime successful, he stated with a smirk. I didn't think that the same trick I used in the preliminaries would work. I guess you aren't as tough as you think, Sasuke. The Uchiha glared hatefully at the Nara while his curse mark pulsed in response to his anger. The pulse made Shika's shadow fluctuate slightly and his eyes narrowed as the curse mark pulsed again, only much more forcefully. The result was Shika losing control of Sasuke's shadow and the Uchiha using his newfound speed that he gained during the month to blur in front of the shadow user and launch him back with a rough kick to the stomach. The Nara was sent tumbling back into one of the other trees gasping for air and Genma halted Sasuke before he could cause any more harm. That's enough. Your opponent is done for. The winner is Uchiha Sasuke. The crowd roared in approval and some medics took away the lazy genius while Sasuke strutted off with an air of superiority. Ash scowled at the Uchiha as he walked off. That guy needs a beatdown and a good one at that. Calm down, Rarity advised. We need to stay calm and show our support for Naruto-kun. She's right, AJ agreed. No sense in getting all fussed up over some no-good fool anyway. Ash crossed her arms in her seat with an annoyed huff and reluctantly calmed herself. It wouldn't do well to fly off the handle, but remembering what the Uchiha did to Naruto made it very difficult not to do so. The fourth match will be between Hyuga Hinata and Kanuta Dosu. Genma declared while the Hyuga perked up to watch their heiress. Unknown to most of the spectators, a hooded figure was on the tiled rooftop just behind the cage booth. They wore a full body coat that was predominantly black in color but had intricate reddish-orange design. On the middle of their back was a large Uzumaki swirl with a kanji for harmony beneath it. Piercing blue eyes could be seen as the figure sat and observed the matches with their left leg dangling off the rooftop while their right arm rested on their raised right knee. 1. The matches are going as expected, they murmured in the tone of a young male. Unfortunately for Hinata, this match goes to Dosu. The Hyuga work up close and that leaves her extremely vulnerable to his sound-based attacks. As predicted, the match went on with Hinata trying to get in close and strike Dosu's Tenketsu, but his Melody Arm's disorientation ability hindered her at every turn. She steadily began losing balance and rhythm with each sound wave that entered her ear canals. After the fifth swing, she finally fell to her knees and released her stomach's contents on the ground in front of her before Genma called the match in favor of Dosu. The medics were quick to take Hinata away while the Hyuga looked incredibly displeased with her performance. However, Hiashi, the head of the clan, knew that his daughter had tried her best. It would seem that the traditional Hyuga style would need some revising and some additions. Alright, the final match of the first rounds will be between Sabaku no Gaara and Uzumaki Naruto. The crowd was quick to boo the demon spawn while the transformed mares cheered for Naruto along with a few people here and there. Out of nowhere, Pinky had pulled out a party popper and used it. However, instead of small streamers from the finger-sized party favor, a firework shot out and exploded, showing Naruto's name in the sparkles. The other mares chuckled at her antics, while others were both awed and confused at how the small party popper had that inside of it. Gaara appeared in the center of the arena in a swirl of sand, while the cloaked figure from before appeared in a swirl of water. Hiruzen and Jiraiya took note of this and deduced that the teen had a water affinity. The figure lowered their hood, showing Naruto's face to the crowd, his eyes brimming with determination and strength. Gaara smirked at that, and the Biju within him called out for the Uzumaki's blood. Let the fifth match begin. Genma called before he jumped away, leaving the two Jinchuriki to stare one another down. Kakashi looked on in earnest, eager to see what his student would bring to the match. Sasuke, who sat next to him, also looked on eagerly. However, he had his Sharingan activated in hopes of learning some new techniques for later. Gaara's slightly crazed eyes stared into Naruto's determined ones before he chuckled. Yes, those are the ones. The eyes of the people who help me prove my existence the best. You will be most helpful in that aspect, Uzumaki. Naruto stood there silently with his arms lowered to his sides, seemingly open to any kind of attack. Gaara's smirk grew as he queried, "What's wrong, Uzumaki? Are you so overcome by fear that you've become as silent as the grave you will soon fill?" "Just shut up and fight, Gaara," replied the Uzumaki in an even tone, surprising many of the spectators. "I didn't come here to talk. I came here to prove that I have what it takes. I came here to bring my people back into the light after being lost to the whispers of the dark for so long." Slowly raising his right arm, he flexed his fingers in a come hither gesture, which made the Tsunagenin's eyes narrow in anger. "Very well then, Uzumaki." He roared as the sand erupted from his gourd and rocketed toward the blonde. Many of the Konoha citizens watched in shock as the blonde just stood there while the sand got closer and closer. Kakashi and Hiruzen were close to shouting at him to move, while Jiraiya had his eyes narrowed in confusion. Damn it, kid. Why wouldn't you move? Only the transformed mares looked on with no signs of fear or panic. Instead, they all had determined smirks on their faces. Especially Twilight. Once the sand reached over half of the distance, the crowd heard Naruto speak. Custos nobilis, dona mihi animum et corpus tuum presidium. To the shock of nearly everyone in the stands, the sand that was so close to reaching the blonde suddenly stopped as if it met resistance and spread out in midair, as if it were covering a wall. The Konoha genin were the most surprised since they had no idea that the Deadlast could pull off something like that. What just happened? Kankuro asked in extreme shock as he sat next to Temari and Baki. Gaara-san was stopped. Baki gasped out. Temari just looked down to her fellow blonde in pure surprise while he stood there with his right arm outstretched and his left lowered. Her eyes squinted to see more clearly as his right hand slowly closed into a fist. However, the fist never closed fully and suddenly opened wide with his fingers outstretched, resulting in the sand being pushed back towards Gaara at the same speed it was launched at Naruto. Gaara's eyes widened slightly at the sudden reversal of his sand and disappeared in a sand swirl, avoiding the devouring wave of grained rock and mineral. He reappeared in one of the trees and willed his sand back into his control before he jumped down. Naruto reached into his cloak and pulled out a kunai and a seal tag, making some of the spectators narrow their eyes. We've only just begun, Gaara, he stated as he wrapped a tag around his kunai, which then lit up a dull blue and extended to the length of a short sword. This is the Chakra Ken Fuyin, Chakra Blade Seal. It is much more difficult to guard against than a regular sword. To the amazement of the crowd, the blonde vanished and Gaara's sand suddenly rose up in a defensive motion before it fell to the ground lifelessly. The Uzumaki was seen standing behind the Redeed with his sword arm outstretched as if he had finished swinging. Without warning, he suddenly spun in place and delivered a backhand slash at Gaara who jumped back slightly to avoid. However, the tip of the chakra blade cut into him making him hold where it hit. However, he felt no blood or any kind of wound, but he still felt slight pain. Have you noticed it now, Gaara? Asked the blonde as he took 2 steps back. Have you realized why it is called the Chakra Ken Fuyin? His answer was a glare and dangerously swirling sand. Let me enlighten you then. This sword is much harder to guard against because of one simple reason. This isn't a regular sword. It's titled what it is because it targets not the body or the flesh, but the energy and the core. In other words, this sword directly cuts away chakra, proven by when it cut off the chakra flowing through your sand earlier and made it fall harmlessly. Many of the older shinobi were amazed at the seal and its incredible usefulness. Hiruzen and Jiraiya were most surprised since they had never heard of such a seal. The Kazukiage, who was in actuality Orochimaru in disguise, licked his lips hungrily at the seal. I knew leaving you alive would be most intriguing. To think that you could come up with such an invaluable seal is nothing short of incredible. I must find a way to sway you to my cause for I'm sure that the seals you've made now will pale to what you come up with in the near or far future. The main 6 all smiled down at the blonde and knew that this was just a few of the things he was capable of. Come on Blondie, you can do it. Dash cried out with a grin, making the others smirk at her. Naruto gave a small smile at her cheer before he deactivated the seal on his kunai and pulled out a different one. Gaara, having grown suspicious of what the seals could be capable of, had his sand rage towards the Uzumaki. Naruto however disappeared in a blur of speed and reappeared on the other side of the arena before he placed the seal on the ground. Tepmizu Fuyin, Flash Flood Seal. Water gushed out of the seal and slowly the arena began to have a rising water level. Gaara was quick to recall his sand to the air surrounding him while Naruto stood on top of the water with a water walking exercise. Gaara was quick to mimic him while the water stopped flowing at a 2-foot level. Get ready, called out Naruto, bringing everyone's attention to him because this is where the hits come harder. Suiton. Suryudan no Jutsu, Water Release. Water Dragon. A serpentine dragon made of swirling water surged out of the water and coiled protectively around the blonde before, with a furious roar, it dove towards the Redeed. Gaara instinctively called forth as much sand as he could to weaken the blow, but he was still pushed back against the wall. We're not done yet. Suiton. Tepndama no Jutsu, Water Bullets. Cried the Uzumaki as he prepared fire large, high-speed shots of water at his opponent. However, a shriek of rage followed by a crushing level of killing intent stopped him in his tracks and the Redeed stepped out from the wall. His right arm, along with the right side of his face, was covered in sand that was riddled with blue markings. The right side of his face looked disfigured from the sand, while his right eye changed from green to amber with a black diamond-shaped pupil. You're right Uzumaki. We are not done yet. Roared Gaara. Naruto glared at Gaara and was about to strike before his senses went crazy and he felt an incredible amount of darkness coming from the cage booth. He gave a sidelong glance to it and sensed that the source was coming from the Kazukiage. But the feeling it felt familiar. Hauntingly so. He quickly remembered who had a similar aura and turned to face the Hokage. Old man, run. He called out before the cage booth erupted in a small explosion followed by many others in the city. In the stands, many of the spectators succumbed to a sudden feeling of sleepiness, but those who were aware released the revealed genjutsu. This included all of the Jonin, some Chunin, Sakura, Sasuke, Shika, Shino, Hinata, and the main six. Hinata also woke up the members of Team Guy, while Shino and Shika woke up the other sleeping genin of the Rookie 12. As soon as they cancelled the technique, all hell broke loose, and Konoha was suddenly locked in battle on a dual front of Suna and Odo. Kakashi quickly made his way over to the still awake genin and ordered, "I want you all to assist in evacuating the citizens. Get them out of harm's way and to the bunkers, now." "But what about Naruto?" asked Shika as he pointed down to the arena floor where Naruto was seen talking to 6 girls. One of which Kakashi and Sasuke had met before. "I'll give him his orders. Now go," ordered the Jonin, and the genin quickly complied with his order. Meanwhile with Naruto, he was issuing out orders of his own. "Twilight. You and Fluttershy assist in getting everyone to safety. Your magic and her speed will help out the most with that." They nodded and left before he turned to the other 4 stated, "Rarity and Pinky. You two help defend the hospital and academy. They'll be prime targets to cripple the village." They left as well, leaving Dash and AJ with him. "You two will help me go after Gaara. He's unstable and we need to calm down his Biju before it completely takes over." They nodded before the 3 of them raced off towards the direction the Suna siblings headed off to. Kakashi heard everything that his student had said and summoned a ninja hound named Pakin to follow the blonde. With Twilight and Fluttershy. "Keep moving, people. Get the children and yourselves to safety as fast as possible," called out Twilight as she used her mana to create a barrier around the evacuating civilians. Fluttershy was a literal blur of speed as she grabbed any stragglers and placed them inside the barrier. Her speed was augmented with her Jinten, swift release, which allowed her to move faster than the naked eye and even some Dojutsu could see. This was proven by Sasuke being unable to see her move with his Sharingan as he helped his fellow genin defend the civilians. He scowled at his inability to see her, but a familiar chakra signature caught his eyes. He turned and saw Naruto's signature heading off toward the outer forests of the village. Eyes narrowing in anger at the blonde getting out of menial tasks, he left in a blur of speed and hurried after him. With Rarity and Pinky. "Don't let them get through," yelled a random Chunin as he held off an Odo nin that tried to get to the hospital. He struggled against the enemy for a second before a sudden cannonball hit them and shot them into a random building. He turned and saw a pinkette girl behind a cannon with a pleased smile on her face. "Oh yay. My party cannon is as awesome as ever," she exclaimed, seemingly unaware of an enemy sneaking up on her. "Look out," called the Chunin, and the girl seemed to smirk and held up a half-ram seal. "Umton. Xen Hajikaru, dream release. Balloon burst," she exclaimed just as she was stabbed from behind. Her form turned fully pink and deformed into a spherical shape before it exploded in a burst of wind and sound. The explosion shot the Sunanin back into one of their fellow shinobi, while Pinky appeared next to Rarity in a burst of confetti. "That was fun," she giddily stated, making her friend roll her eyes with a smile and form hand seals of her own. "Well, let's see how they stand up to my beautiful creations." Shoten. "Arashi no Kan, crystal release. Diamond storm," exclaimed the transformed unicorn as bright purple crystals formed in front of her before they broke apart into senbon-shaped shards and flew at her targets. As they hit their marks, Pinky looked on with starry eyes. "Wow. It's as pretty as ever." "Naturally," stated Rarity as she flicked her hair behind her with a pleased smile. With Naruto. Currently, the blonde genin was crouched on the back of Dash, who had transformed back into a pony with AJ, as she flew above the tree lines after the Suna siblings, while AJ easily kept up on the ground below. His blue eyes scanned below in search of any sign of Gaara or his siblings. He caught a flicker of black and brown and pointed to where he saw it. "There, that's where they are." Ash nodded and dive-bombed at them, making Gaara stop and snarl. Temari and Kankuro stopped as well, and the Kunoichi was quick to pull out her fan and swing it with a cry of "Kamitachi, sickle weasel." The wind picked up from the fan and shot at the diving Pegasus with razor-sharp blades. Naruto scowled at that and flew through hand seals before he called out, "Fueton. Rankton, wind release. Drilling air bullet." The blast of air clashed with the sickle-like blades in a burst of wind that Dash easily flew past. Once close enough, Naruto kicked off of her back and rammed into Gaara, while the Pegasus struck Temari with a dive-bombing headbutt. Kankuro scowled and pulled out his wrapped puppet before he was suddenly rammed into by AJ, who had caught up. "Not this time, partner," she exclaimed before her form became surrounded in a slightly green shroud of chakra and she slammed her hooves on the ground. "Mokuton. Shichikram no Jutsu, wood release. 4-pillar prison." From the earth below the puppet user, 4 pillars of wood shot up and they were quick to grow bars to interlock them and make walls and a ceiling. Kankuro was left speechless at the jutsu while the orange mare smirked. "Stay put for a little while," she stated before she left to help out her fellow pony. But she was swerving around in the air to avoid the rapid-fire blasts of wind that Tamari kept launching at her. "Hold still, you damn horse," raged the blonde. "What are you, blind? I'm a Pegasus. Not a horse," yelled the pony. "Like I give a damn," yelled back Tamari. "Just hold still so I could blast you into next week." "How about a kick into next week instead?" asked AJ as she had snuck up behind the fan user and mule kicked her in her rear while Dash's form glowed a stormy gray. "Branton. Tafe no jutsu, storm release. Typhoon," exclaimed the rainbow-haired mare as she released a funnel of swirling light that slammed into Tamari and blasted her into a tree's trunk, effectively knocking her out. "Nice one, Dash," complimented the earth pony. "Thanks. We should hurry up and help Naruto-kun." The orange mare nodded and they both hurried after their summoner, unaware that a certain Avenger saw their whole scuffle with narrowed red eyes. "Naruto vs. Gaara. Hold still and die, Uzumaki," roared a deformed Gaara as he swung his sand claw at the blonde. Said blonde leaned back and avoided the strike while lashing out with a kick at the Jinchuriki. The Redeed jumped back from the kick while swinging his arm and releasing a volley of sand shuriken. Naruto was quick to duck under them before he raised an arm to Gaara and unleashed his chakra chains at him. They wrapped around the Ichibi Jinchuriki's transformed arm and the Kyuubi Jinchuriki grabbed the chain with both hands before he pulled as hard as he could. Gaara was unprepared for this and Naruto was able to lift him over his head and slam him down on the ground behind him. Unfortunately, the Suna Genin was able to cushion his impact with his sand before it exploded outward. Naruto lost focus on his chains and jumped away as Gaara's entire upper torso was covered in sand, making him look like a mini Biju complete with a single tail. "Right now what?" mumbled Naruto before he heard the sound of many birds chirping. He turned and saw Sasuke leap over his head and thrust a lightning-inked hand at Gaara. "Chidori, 1000 birds," cried out the Uchiha as he sliced right through Gaara's left arm and made it fall into lifeless sand. He landed behind the Redeed and smirked only to have it change to a look of shock as the arm reformed back completely. "Not got enough, Uchiha," Gaara stated as he used his tail to smack the Avenger aside and into a tree. "Now stay out of this fight. Uzumaki will help prove my existence here and now." "Branton. Ria's Kasu, laser circus," cried out Dash as she flew in front of Naruto and released a beam that split into 5 and struck Gaara's arms, legs, and chest. The resulting strike pushed him back into the woods while a recovered Sasuke called on his curse mark and leapt after him. "You alright, Naruto?" asked AJ as she landed beside him and took a quick look over. "Yay, I'm fine. Listen, I want you girls to keep Sasuke out of the way. I may not like him, but he's still a member of the Leaf." Dash narrowed her eyes. "You plan on fighting Gaara alone, don't you?" "That was my intention," confessed the blonde before he was pinned to the tree by the Pegasus as she transformed into her human form. "Like hell you are," she yelled at him, making his eyes widen. "I'm not gonna stand by and watch you fight when I know I could help you. You don't have to fight alone, Naruto." Her angered eyes softened as her tone turned whispery. "You're not alone." Naruto looked to her with guilt at her words. That was as far as he got before she leaned in and kissed him fully on the lips, making his and AJ's eyes widen in shock. Dash kept pouring all her emotions into the lip lock and slowly Naruto reciprocated the action. Her hands moved to his whiskered cheeks and caressed them while she moved back from the kiss. With a caring smile she stated, "You're not in this alone, Naruto-kun. Let us fight with you." His blue eyes turned to AJ and the mare nodded with determination burning in her eyes. With a sigh, he smiled and replied, "Alright, we'll do this together. Now let's hurry up and keep Sasuke from getting himself killed." They nodded and, after Dash changed back, the trio rushed through the treetops before they reached the scene of Sasuke being backhanded by Gaara's sand arm and smacking into another tree. Gaara's eyes turned to them and a blood-crazed grin etched across his face. "Finally decided to stop hiding, Uzumaki." The blonde didn't answer him and instead went through some very complex hand seals. "Dash, AJ, get ready," he warned them, making them nod. "Pay attention Gaara. This is a technique used by the woman who taught me true strength. This is her legacy. Heimton. Makam Heimshm, ice release. Demonic mirroring ice crystals." From nothing but the unseen water in the air, 21 mirrors made entirely of ice were formed around Gaara. 12 being ground level, 8 a level above them and angled toward the ground and the last acting as the ceiling of the dome. Naruto and the mares stepped up to a mirror and, to the eyes of Gaara and the barely conscious Sasuke, they sunk into the mirror. In the others, their reflections were seen. The 3 of them taking 7 mirrors each. "It's over, Gaara," echoed Naruto's voice as his reflections took out a kunai that had a seal tag on it. "Give up while you still have a chance." Gaara snarled at the blonde, giving him his response. Regret was seen in the Uzumaki's eyes as he muttered, so be it. The next thing the Redeed felt was pain. Blows struck him from every direction coupled with slashes that left no cuts but made his sand fall off. The blows hit hard and some had left seeds planted into the sand before it fell to the ground. Other blows left shocks into his system, making it difficult to move. After what felt like hours but was actually around 3 minutes, the blows stopped and the mirrors were filled once again. Had enough? Asked Ash with narrowed eyes. Gaara gave the mirrors a murderous glare as the sand attempted to return to its host. Shut up. He raged. This strength, that power, where do you get it from? How are you stronger than me when I have nothing holding me back? AJ shook her head sadly. There's the problem, she started. You don't have anyone to help you. To rely on. You can't do everything alone. You see, Naruto continued, it's the bonds and love we have between us and the ones we hold dear that fuel us. That drive us to push past our limits. We beat you because of this bond while you severed all of them. You haven't won yet. Countered Gaara as his pupils slowly began to leave his eyes. The trio saw this and AJ replied, yes we have. Mokuten. Sakuringo N, Blooming Apple Orchard. From the seeds, trees began to erupt and wrap around Gaara in a subjugating way. The branches wrapped around his arms while the trunk engulfed his legs and torso. The Redeed felt his chakra get siphoned out of him while the trees began to produce yellow apples with blue leaves. Once big enough, the apples fell and instantly rotted upon touching the forest floor. When Gaara was left with the bare minimum amount of chakra, the tree sank back into the ground while the ice mirrors shattered and revealed the trio standing next to one another. Naruto gazed at the weakened Jinchuriki sadly as he began to walk toward him. Gaara noticed this and fear entered his eyes. Stay back. I won't let you erase my existence. The loneliness, it's unbearable, isn't it? Asked the blonde, getting everyone's attention. I've known this loneliness for most of my life. Family and friends were nothing more than dreams to me. My parents are dead and I was hated for the burden you and I share. Tears threatened to spill from the corners of his eyes as he continued, I found out that I could have had a family. A whole clan that could have raised me. But I was unlucky enough to be born alone. At least you have people who still love you and care for you from the very beginning. I only just started having a family about 2 months ago. Gaara looked into the eyes of his fellow Jinchuriki and saw despair, pain, and pure loneliness in the blue orbs. But beneath all that was a glimmer of hope and faith. Be thankful for what you have, Gaara family will never betray you so long as you don't betray them. Because in the end, they will be all you have left, finished the Uzumaki as Temari and Kankuro landed next to Gaara with their weapons drawn. No, whispered Gaara, making them turn to him. No more fighting, I just want to go home. The older two Suna siblings looked to one another before they gave soft gazes to their youngest brother. Sure thing, Gaara, Kankuro said before he hefted Gaara onto his back. With one final look towards Naruto, he left towards Suna. Temari kept her gaze on her fellow blonde with confusion written all over her eyes. Naruto stared her down before she gave a small smirk and nodded. Don't slack off, Whiskers. I plan to have a rematch someday. Her smirk then turned into a smile of gratitude and she finished, and thank you, I never thought I'd ever get my baby brother back. She then left the area as well, while Naruto smiled and whispered to no one, you're welcome. Konoha, 2 days later. Naruto gazed on with a torn expression as the funeral for the Sandaime went on. On one hand, he was crushed that the old man had died and was enraged that Orochimaru took him down. On the other hand, he was angry with Hiruzen for lying to him for so long. So, he shed no tears for the man and chose to simply remember him as the revered village leader. The man he once called Jiji died long before the Sandaime did. And with the death of the Sandaime came another step towards the thought of leaving Konoha for good. What if Naruto Pony Summoner and My Little Pony end here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.